Good morning. For those online, if you can hear me, so we'll start the program by 10 prompts. Kindly hold on. Thank you.
Je me sens seule sans toi. Je me sens vide sans toi. Penses-tu à moi? J'ai tellement besoin de toi.
know you don't know me. I'm afraid to take a chance. I will bridge the gap between us. Come on, let's begin the dance. Don't want us to risk it. Now we're gonna make that right. Isolation lifted. Thank you. Good morning once again, esteemed guests, both in the room and online. My name is Rafiat Lawal, and I warmly welcome you to today's event on catalyzing bankable PPPs through project preparation facility. We appreciate your presence here today and we look forward to a productive session. Before we kick off, I would like to invite the security personnel here to give us housekeeping rules. Yeah, briefly, please. Thank you.
Good morning, participants. You're welcome to Abuja Continental Hotel. This is the safest, secured, and the most comfortable event center in Abuja. Saleh Mohammed is my name. I'm the hotel safety manager. For your safety and security, we deem it necessary to tell you the protocols as regards the use of this hall, so that from beginning till the end of the program, we will not record any incident. However, before I go further, if there's a need for you to use the convenience, it is very easy to locate. If you just go out through any of the doors, turn to the left. As you proceed there, you'll see one of the meeting halls like this called Obecha B. Immediately you pass the Obecha B, turn to the left. As you are proceeding, you see two doors to the left-hand side. Everything left, left. The first door you meet there is for the female convenience, while the door next to it is for the male convenience. We advise you always look before you enter so that you'll not find yourself in a wrong destination. Aside that, today is not scheduled for a fire drill. Therefore, should there be a steady ringing of fire alarm bell for 5 to 10 seconds or beyond that, that suggests that something might have gone wrong somewhere or it's a false alarm. However, whatsoever the reason may be, please do not panic, be calm, because we have emergency response team members on standby to do the needful should something go contrary to our expectation. And if evacuation becomes necessary, we have two assembly points. One, you can pass through any of the two entrance doors, turn to the right. As you turn to the right, you see 4 exit doors. Pass through any of the exit doors, turn to the left, you see the muster point where you are expected to assemble based on your group, as others are having their event within the large quality hall. If assembling will not be possible there for whatsoever reason, we have alternative assembly point. And you can get there by still passing through these two exit entrance doors, turn to the left, just like you are going to the convenience. There are 4 exit doors there again. Pass through any. As soon as you pass through, you see directional signs that will take you to the alternative assembly point. Then on the security aspect, this is a public place, though it's a controlled environment. It is very, very important that your personal valuable belongings, more especially mobile phones, should be kept or should not be kept unattended rather. Please, it's not just peculiar to this place, it's a global best practice while you are in gathering, so that you will not have a cause to complain of either loss, damage, or misplacement of any item. Just like other organizations, Abuja Continental Hotel will not be liable for any. Please, let us be guided. In case of medical emergency, we have first aiders all over the premises to do the needful. Should something go contrary when it comes to medical issues, we pray there will even be none. But in case of anything beyond our control, we have a hospital just a kilometer away from the hotel to refer the person to for proper medical examination. Then any other general emergency, we have a dedicated line, extension 8111, just dial from our desk phones, or better still, call any of our staff who will call our attention, and within 3 minutes maximum, we'll be available to do the needful. So without wasting your time, on behalf of the management, I wish you a successful program. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Saleh, for that. Okay, so to officially kick off now, I would like to invite Mrs. Sadia Aliu. Mrs. Sadia Aliu is the facilitator of the NESG Infrastructure and Allied Services Policy Commission. Please let's welcome her.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. I was going to say early in the morning, but it's not too early. And on top of that, we've been able to also have breakfast. I get the easy job today, which is to actually just welcome you. And it's an incredible privilege and honor for me to do that. So ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome. My name is Sadia Aliu, as was mentioned by my lovely colleague, Rafia. I wear two hats, and for today, I am the facilitator for the Infrastructure and Allied Services Policy Commission under the Nigeria Economic Summit Group. It's a mouthful, but please just call me Sadia. So I'm delighted to welcome you all to the 31st Nigeria Economic Summit pre-summit event. And we run a series of these pre-summit events all the way through from end of July, August, and early September. I think we're one of the last 1 or 2 events, so really enjoy it. And this event is on catalyzing bankable public-private partnerships through an infrastructure project preparation facility. So this gathering, I should really mention right up front actually, is a collaboration between the IASPC, but more importantly, I think also the UK Nigeria Infrastructure Advisory Facility. They have been amazing partners today, and I actually want us to give them a round of applause. So it marks a pivotal moment, I think, really in our collective efforts to address what we know is a glaring, obvious gap in Nigeria's critical infrastructure deficit. And we know that we're facing a monumental challenge in terms of funding. And my colleagues will go through what those kind of figures are. So this cannot be achieved because of the large sums by public funds alone. We know that the private sector has to be instrumental in terms of coming together to achieve those end goals. We also know underlying that persistent project preparation remains a challenge, and we have identified a number of significant barriers that need to be unlocked to really kind of get this potential into a reality. These include some of the difficult upstream developments, such as lack of comprehensive feasibility studies, lack of risk assessments, capacity constraints even within some of the agencies, and of course, bureaucratic bottlenecks that happen top to bottom and bottom to top. And these also have historically limited, private investments. So with this in mind and the urgent need to do this, we do now are incredibly pleased to note that the federal government has intentionally allocated funds towards establishing the Nigeria Project Preparation Facility. The facility represents a paradigm shift, moving us from ad hoc project development into a more systematic, institutionalized, and hopefully intentional approach for arriving at viable, profitable projects. The NPPF in its pure form is meant to expand the pipeline of bankable infrastructure projects. It's supposed to reduce early stage development risk. It's supposed to enhance private sector confidence and standardize project preparation processes while also promoting sustainable and inclusive infrastructure development that hopefully, in theory and in practice, aligns with our national priorities, including the much touted Nigeria Infrastructure Integrated Master Plan and even the energy transition map. Right. With that in mind, and I won't say too much more because we have our amazing director here with us, Mr. Nana Ude, who will take us through what I call the nitty-gritty of it. We've got an amazing panel today that I'm really excited to hear from. So I've got my notebook and pen, and we're really looking for what I call an interactive session. We've got a small group of us. We're in this small hall so that we can almost have something like workshop style after this and really have a Q&A session at the end and wrap up as well, and then really have a concrete idea of what our roadmap strategy should look like going forward to this. So I look forward to getting to kind of meet you all one-on-one. Please approach me. Like I said, my name is Sadia. There are no barriers to discussion. There are what I call no solutions that may not work. We simply have to have it, try it, see it, and see how it works. So I welcome you all once again. Thank you very much for having us, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much, Ma, for setting the stage for today's conversation. So the next item on the agenda is the welcome address. So to do that, please join me in welcoming Mr. Nana Ude, the director at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group.
Good morning, everyone. I think my job is simple, to repeat everything that Sadia said. with a male voice, so we ensure gender balance in welcoming everyone. Well, you will hear me repeat a lot of things that she said, but gender balance. So, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the board and management of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, it is my distinct pleasure to join my dear sister Sadia to welcome all our distinguished panelists, the moderator, who is one of us, and the very esteemed participants who are seated here to this pre-summit event to discuss catalyzing bankable PPPs through the Infrastructure Project Preparation Facility. This event, as you all know, is hosted by the NESG Infrastructure and Allied Services Policy Commission. For those of us who don't know much about the NESG is a policy think tank set up by the private sector to champion and promote a competitive economy, a globally competitive economy. It was actually established in 1996, so next year will be our 30th anniversary as a group. But then the institution itself predates that. It was set up on the back of the first Nigerian Economic Summit, which was held in 1993, February 16th to 18th, when private sector leaders saw the way the economy was going and felt to convene a public-private dialogue to kind of advise the military administration at that time on how best to navigate the economic complexities of the structural adjustment program. 2 or 3 summits down the line, it became important to institutionalize that process through the establishment of the NESG. And we are happy that this is our 31st anniversary coming up in October, but almost 30th year as an NESG. And within the NESG, we do our work through different platforms, but the primary pillar is the policy commissions. We originally had 12 policy commissions. They were actually set up again on the back of 14 working groups that used to drive the summit process. In 2006, we decided again to institutionalize that process because the idea, then it was all about meeting only at summits every year. So we decided to create an institution out of them and created the policy commissions. There were 12. Earlier this year, the board decided to restructure the policy commissions and reduce the number to 7. But because of the centrality of infrastructure to national development, even with that restructuring, we still retained the Infrastructure Policy Commission. I joined the Policy Commission in 2007. So it's my 18th year as a member of the Policy Commission. And I'm so happy that we are still powering on, doing the best that we can in the national interest. And we are glad that this event is hosted in collaboration with the United Kingdom Nigeria Infrastructure Advisory Facility. I must say, I probably am one of the oldest in the Policy Commission. They have been partners with this Policy Commission for a very long time. And even though Sadia had asked for a round of applause, I am also going to ask you to round of applause. Thank you, UK and IF, and we hope that going forward, you will continue to be our partner in the Policy Commission. So this event is part of a series of pre-summit activities leading up to the 31st Nigerian Economic Summit, next 31, which will be jointly organized by the NESG representing the private sector and the Federal Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning representing the federal government. And the theme of this year's summit is the reform imperative, building a prosperous and inclusive Nigeria by 2030. So these pre-summit events are usually designed to elicit critical conversations from stakeholders in the weeks leading up to the summit, which is scheduled to take place from October 6 to 8, 2025 at the Transcorp Hilton Hotel, Abuja. So please, if you haven't registered for the summit, I encourage you right now to go to www.31.nextgroup.org and register now. I can give you a few seconds to do that. I'll continue. We're here to address a critical reform imperative that is one of the most serious challenges constraining the attainment of a prosperous and inclusive Nigeria by 2030, which is a persistent infrastructure deficit. ever since I got involved in the infrastructure space, it has become a recurring theme, our wide and growing infrastructure deficit. The numbers tell us that Nigeria requires an estimated $2.3 trillion by 2043 to achieve a 70% increase in our infrastructure stock, a goal that cannot be met solely with public resources. This has made public-private partnerships essential for unlocking the investment required for national development. However, despite the existing regulatory frameworks, and I'm glad my brother is here representing the ICRC, we have been held back by a fundamental systemic issue, a lack of high-quality investment-grade projects. Proposals that are poorly prepared, lacking comprehensive feasibility studies and bankable structures have consistently deterred private sector investment. This vicious cycle, where limited early stage funding hinders quality project development, in turn deters private capital and has stalled our progress for too long. So, my friends, this pre-summit event is a direct and strategic response to this challenge. And today, we are here to discuss a transformative solution, which is the Nigeria Project Preparation Facility, MPPF. Like Sadia said, this strategic intervention, for which the federal government has allocated 21 billion naira in the 2024 budget and another 21 billion naira in the 2025 budget, is designed to break that bottleneck in project preparation. The MPPF will serve as a dedicated, unified mechanism to provide early-stage financing and technical support, transforming conceptual proposals into bankable, investment-ready projects. So our objective is simple: to move beyond conversations to secure tangible, actionable outcomes. We are here to raise awareness of the MPPF as a flagship initiative, strengthen the institutional buy-in from key government agencies, and begin discussions to mobilize support from the private sector and development partners. We aim to achieve a consensus roadmap for the MPPF's operationalization and to agree to advance at least 10 priority projects to bankability within the first 24 months of the facility's operation. We can do it. We can break that jinx. Comparator countries like Nigeria have advanced in infrastructure development using PPPs. There is no reason Nigeria should not be on that path. We must demonstrate that the MPPF will reduce early stage risks, standardize preparation processes, and most importantly, boost investor confidence. So this is more than a policy dialogue. It is a fundamental shift in our approach to infrastructure development. We are now moving from a fragmented ad hoc system to a systematic institutionalized one. Our focus is on building a collaborative ecosystem that allows public and private resources to work in harmony. We are not just discussing a single issue. We are financing resilience and building the groundwork for a more prosperous, competitive, and sustainable Nigeria. So I urge everyone to please think differently. Let us use this moment to develop practical strategies and secure concrete commitments that will accelerate the operationalization of the MPPF. Your insights, your commitments, and collaboration that we can achieve here will be vital to making this facility a success and a lasting legacy for Nigeria's economic future. So once again, I extend my profound appreciation to every resource person and participant for honoring our invitation. We look forward to a productive session. Finally, I implore you again to register for the 31st Nigerian Economic Summit through the NESG website, to join us in October, along with other experts and stakeholders, in articulating an agenda for sustaining reforms that will deliver prosperity and inclusive development. I wish us all fruitful deliberation. May God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the warm and inspiring welcome notes. Please let's give him another round of applause. So we'll now move on to the keynote presentation for the day from the UK NIAF team. To do the presentation, please join me in welcoming Mr. Abdul Oladapo.
Good morning, everyone. All protocols duly observed. I do have some slides. I'll be grateful if it can be put up. Yeah, but anyways, I think I'll just start off with background and context. Thanks a lot, Sadia, and for, providing the context, but just to add to it, and this is ahead of a panel discussion. Yeah, I think I was also speaking with a colleague this morning that our challenge in Nigeria isn't necessarily funding, right? And to contextualize that further, it aligns with what NES 31 is looking to do this year, which is the reform imperative, right? So it's not necessarily funding, because for the first time, Nigeria has made a significant commitment towards transforming its infrastructure sector by committing 21 billion naira in the 2024 budget and another sum of money in the 2025 budget, which means there's no lack of ambition in ensuring projects are designed to be bankable. A statement has been made. However, nothing has happened since then. So essentially what we're doing here is to come and talk about this, right? And say, how does Nigeria move forward? How does Nigeria move from having projects that are not properly structured and attractive to the private sector to move to projects that are properly structured and attractive to the private sector that can crowd in finance? And to do that, I will walk through a number of slides, talk about it in more detail, bring an example from India. Well, that's not because my PM is from India, but we looked at other options. We looked at Philippines. We have a guest from Kenya who's going to talk about the experience in Kenya, so I don't have to talk about that. So we'll walk through a number of that and see how we can apply all of this to Nigeria. And yes, let NESG do what NESG does, which is engage with government to ensure we have a pathway forward. Before my slides come up, I think I would also talk a bit about UK NIAF. The program, United Kingdom Nigeria Infrastructure Advisory Facility, is funded by the UK by UK government, UK aid. It's actually the third iteration. The program has been there for a long time. This iteration is a 6-year program, which is just about ending. So this is likely going to be our last workshop. So, well, we know there will be some sort of support going forward by the FCDA that we're confident about anyway. But for this iteration, we've generally supported infrastructure finance and the power sector, right? And just to ensure a lot of the work we have done is not wasted and it's able to, it's adopted. We've actually developed a knowledge hub, which we're very proud about. So a lot of the work we've done, the tools, the templates, they're hosted on there. So government agencies, private sector entities can actually access this and be able to utilize this forward. We are proud of our partnership with the NESG, as Nanda mentioned earlier. Okay, but without the slides, I think I'll have to proceed. So one big challenge which we keep talking about is Nigeria's infrastructure deficit. We keep talking about, I think the number is what, $2.3 trillion. That's the number we've been pushing around right from when the infrastructure master plan was done. But to actually address this, what are the challenges we do have to address this? Part of it is funding. We keep talking about funding projects. We keep talking about lack of pipeline of bankable projects. But really, it's about ensuring capital flows to infrastructure projects, right? And why is it that capital is not flowing? Is it a shortage of capital? Is it a lack of skills? There's so many reasons behind it, but a central issue, right? A central issue is the bankability paradox. It's about projects. You just don't have enough bankable projects in the market, right? From my experience as UK NIAF, we've pulled together a pipeline of projects. I mean, with working with subnationals, gosh, I think we had maybe over 100 projects on the pipeline, working with federal agencies as well. Again, 100 projects in the pipeline, but a lot of these projects remain on the spreadsheets with a brief project description. Even if you ask for a 4-page concept note, you will not get one. So you actually do need to do that detailed work. Some of that work can be done in-house in government MDAs because they do have technical capacity if they are pushed to do it. But a lot of the time, they do need to pay for studies, feasibility studies, sector studies, real solid technical studies, site visits to really be able to establish the development objectives for these projects and structure the viability. And maybe I should take a step back. It's not just projects that are attracting private sector we're talking about here, even public investment projects. Because to get a project done, even if it's the typical projects in the budget, it's not enough to just pick projects from a list and implement them. You actually need to figure out, is it a good project to do? If government has, say, if you have maybe 3 trillion naira capital votes, okay, if you have 3 trillion naira capital votes, what are the projects to do? When you actually do those initial assessments, you can actually identify the projects that will give you the best development objectives, and that way, those are the projects you should do. So even for those projects, you need to do that. Okay, could you move on to the next slide? Okay, next one again. Okay, yes. So going to, so it's really about inadequate project preparation. So you would look at, I mean, I did talk about feasibility studies, and when that happens, projects just won't get to close, right? Next slide. So it will be good to talk about previous programs that's happened. And we've had but support from World Bank PPIF to support institutional reforms and capacity building. There was also the World Bank PPP program in Nigeria. At the time, there was a World Bank PPP program in Nigeria, in Ghana, and Kenya. Nigeria's one it failed. I mean, to just summarize the outcome. Ghana was also not successful. Kenya was actually quite successful compared to Nigeria and Ghana. And yes, we're actually pleased again to talk about having a representative from the Kenya PPP program to be able to talk through what happened in Kenya and why they made their success. And we're now at the cusp of doing something transformational. We do need to ensure we engage with government to be able to drive this forward. Next slide. So why is it so important? Again, we don't have, the capital is available, right? It's there. What we need to do is to be able to ensure the right thing is done. And I think to add to that, I think on our panel, also like to mention that we have a representative from AFC as well. AFC is an institution that was created essentially to pull capital and structure projects to make capital. And you can say it's a massive success story. What can Nigeria learn from that? So being able to identify projects, bridge that gap to ensure the projects are attractive to the private sector is crucial. And that's where Nigeria needs to go. That's what the project preparation facility should do. And Nigeria should be able to move from vision, ambition to execution, because the vision is there. We want to do projects. We want to get projects bankable. The ambition is there by putting money in the budget, but then what about the execution, which is where we're sitting on. Next slide. So going going deeper into anchoring efforts to add to what talked about before. The commitment is then putting in project. But another aspect I haven't talked about is the establishment of a committee. So there were separate conversations, even as high as presidency level, about having IFC to be involved in it, and there were conversations between government and IFC to support it. In addition to that, a committee was formed, chaired by the DG Budget Office, and had the key institutions in Nigeria, government institutions around PPPs in Nigeria within that committee. We do have ICRC who will be on the panel, a member of the committee, Bureau for Public Enterprises, MOFI, I think NSIA, Infraco Nigeria. And I mean, work has been done to walk through how this facility can be designed and taken forward. But those efforts hasn't moved forward. Next slide. But now, sometimes when you want to move forward, you have to step back and look at why you haven't moved forward. So I would walk through some of the lessons from the past, but also look at lessons from India, which is the key case study we've taken for today. So World Bank PPP program, there was a decent amount of funding available for feasibility studies. Projects were selected, although it was very slow. It was challenging at the time to convince MDAs to commit to giving up their projects to be prepared. Then it was structured. Initially, I think the PIU was within the ICRC, but it later moved to the Ministry of Finance. And the design then was essentially a call to projects where the ministries apply for projects, but the PIU was responsible for engaging the consultants, doing the feasibility studies, and driving the projects forward. I mean, we do know in Nigeria that sometimes ownership is a very key issue. Who owns the projects? Who drives the process? Possibly that was one of the reasons that stalled it. I don't know, but things worked a lot in Kenya. Maybe we'll hear what Kenya did differently that made this work. But unfortunately, whilst the number of projects were prepared and agreements signed, none of it actually got off the ground. Also, there was significant underutilization of funds, and eventually World Bank canceled the program. And since then, Nigeria has continued to struggle. Yes, PPPs do happen, but is it happening at scale? No, it's not. Next slide. So let's go into India, right? So India created an infrastructure project development fund, right? And again, similar challenge to Nigeria, projects not moving forward. So what was the thinking for them? And they didn't just design it to prepare projects alone. It was also to create a viability gap funding as well. Then it was also sort of created as part of their enabling PPF laws and showing their guidelines, templates, and toolkits. Right. Next slide. And to look at how India was structured, they looked at it not just for federal. So it was federal, municipal, and if you look at Nigeria, we have the federal, we have subnationals, and all, we have states. India designed theirs as a revolving fund. So essentially, the funding will go to the MDAs to drive the projects and all, which essentially was like an interest-free loan, which was now recovered when a project gets to commercial, rather financial close. And it was designed not to cover the whole cost of project development. So essentially, the implementing agents that wants to do the project needs to have some capital to be able to commit to that project preparation activity. It was within the Ministry of Finance that was housed. Next slide. This is just to show how that structure worked. So essentially, you do have central government MDAs, state government MDAs, municipals. They could sort of get funding from that. They put together a pipeline of eligible projects. They screen. And to be honest, as we go on towards the end of the presentation, I can also talk about a lot of the work NIAF has done, which if Nigeria is replicating this, we can utilize. We have developed a screening tool which can be used to screen projects into PPF. We have developed templates for business cases, for tender documents. A lot of this is there and Nigeria can adopt it, right? So these are work which they've largely been embedded in subnational entities and also in some of the federal MDAs we have worked with, but now looking at it from a central PPF perspective, yes, it's something that can be adopted. And I wouldn't say if, I would say when Nigeria's PPF eventually kicks up. Next slide. So what should be the focus of Nigeria's PPF, right? And there's so many ways to look at it, which I'll go into detail. One of it is you need to resolve the ownership issue, right? Is it the entity housing it that should prepare the projects and drive them forward, where MDs essentially give up ownership of how projects are driving? Or should it be essentially a fund that they apply for and they still drive projects their own way? It's for Nigeria to decide, right? I mean, there are pros and cons of all of this, which we can walk through as we go on, right? What should be the funding used for? And no, what kind of studies do you want to fund, right? But generally, it's important for you to be able to fund feasibility analysis, technical studies, transaction structuring, and just support that process to identify, I mean, potential sectors for investment and all, then managing project preparation. There's quite a bit that that it should be able to do. Next slide. I mean, key considerations, now going into options, right? One very important thing we identified is it needs a fund manager, right? Or a facility manager, depending on how you want to frame it. I would also come to a second aspect, which is to have a custodian, and I'll talk about the need for a custodian. Now, the manager could be, it's really up to how Nigeria wants to proceed with this. It can be a specialized government entity like a financial institution, which could be Bank of Industry, DBN, or NSI. It could also be Bureau of Enterprises and Franco Mofi. Well, I haven't mentioned ICRC here because they're a regulator, but that you can put that in the hat. But then it can also be managed within the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning, which currently houses the funds, or the Budget Office. Also, you could be a specialized government entity. For example, Nigeria has created Renewable Infrastructure Development Fund, which is a successor to PIDF. That could be an option as well. But whichever way you want to look at it, you still do need a governance framework around that. But then, even when you have a manager, you do need to, Nigeria needs to decide, will the facility manager be responsible for essentially taking on those projects and preparing the projects and driving it? Because then it now becomes a vehicle for Nigeria's priority projects to be delivered. I think I'll give an example for in Senegal, for example, where they created a specialized government entity, right, for driving projects. And that entity was just there to champion and drive priority projects in a country, irrespective of the fact that those projects were owned by other MDs, similar to the privatization scheme, where assets were owned by certain government entities, but a central organization, BP, was set up to actually drive that program. And that way, it enables you sort of bring in the skills required, which are specialist skills, in one place, rather than having those skills in different MDAs, which sometimes is challenging to have 20 infrastructure heavy MDAs all having experienced people in those units to drive projects forward, right? You could bring all the skills in one place and they are essentially a vehicle to move it forward. Again, these are considerations, there are pros and cons, and it's for Nigeria to decide which way to go. Next slide. Okay, so going into this in more detail, what will be the duties of the PMU? So it's really general supervision and monitoring. It'll be the secretariat to the steering committee. But then if you go with the option of project screening, shortlisting, appraisal, doing these studies, or and also supervising the consultants, that's one option. Another option is it could just be engaging with the MDAs, right, who own the projects and who will drive the process. Then supervising ministry will be the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning. It's important to also mention another sort of initiative that is going on, which is the Nigerian Infrastructure Finance and Guarantee Facility, which was approved by the Federal Executive Council as part of the Renewed Hope Infrastructure Fund. That's a different initiative, which is at formation stage. But that's also something that's really important around the conversation of a project preparation facility. It focuses more on the guarantee component, which complements preparing projects. But I think it's important to look at that within the whole ecosystem. Next slide. Design options, I would run through this quickly because we've talked about it a lot already. Next slide. So going into more detail, manage as a subsidiary of a public financial institution. So we actually did look at the different organizations, Bank of Industry, DBN, NSI. I mean, from our assessment, it's really NSI that has the infra experience to be able to sort of be the custodian and manager as well. Development Bank of Nigeria is essentially does wholesale mainly. They will potentially act as a good custodian because yes, they're strong when it comes to holding money, conducting treasury functions. But if they're going to manage, they don't really have the in-house expertise. So if you're going with the option of having a separate custodian and a separate manager, then yeah, potentially you could have DBN or even Bank of Industry as a custodian to hold your funds. But you still do need an entity that has that infrastructure experience to be able to conduct the management side. Next slide. Then managed by a government agency or portfolio company with a separate custodian. So this is now the option of having, for example, maybe a DBN, for example, or BOI as a custodian. Then you have some of the, government agencies or quasi agencies like BP Infraco or Morphe to be the manager. But again, you now need to decide what is the role of the manager. Are they essentially managing fund disbursements to MDAs, or are they doing the heavy lifting in preparing projects? Next slide. And this is now managed internally by a PMU. So this would be a centralized project management unit within the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning, or potentially within the budget office, as the funds is held by those that manage Nigeria's budget. And that way it now gives ministry oversight over this. But then there is there are two things. One, some of the thinking around why a custodian, and also the pros and cons of the kind of manager you select. For a custodian, Nigeria has a budget cycle where if you get to the end of the budget year, you don't utilize your funds. Yes, it does get extended, but if you don't utilize it, it goes back to the treasury. When you move it to a custodian who's managing it, then it sits outside the budget. It now then means it can be invested. You can get returns from that. You will have very clear disbursement criteria when certain things are met, but it just gives that comfort that the funding is protected, right? So that's the, benefits of having that. You also have, it also sits outside TSA and things like that. On having a manager, in some cases, there's a lot of recent streamlining of our procurement processes, but then sometimes procurement processes, bureaucracy within government could really delay project preparation and just not let things happen. So that's why having a specialized PMU within a ministry or the budget office could slow things down. And sometimes it's a lot quicker when you have a specialized institution outside government doing that. But again, that's for Nigeria to decide which way it wants to go. Next slide. And this option is looking at a specialized new entity. I gave the example of Renewable Infrastructure Development Fund. I mean, although right now we're not very sure of how Renewed Hope Infrastructure Fund is set up, but that's something to think about as an option to drive this. Next slide. So I will essentially now give it to the panelists to take forward and for the participants to engage with the panelists to think through what does Nigeria need to do, right? Nigeria, we want to have development outcomes for our people. We want to ensure projects are done. This creates this creates jobs. This increases improves people's livelihoods. There's so much that can be achieved when you invest significantly in infrastructure. We have things set in place already, but how do we take this forward? So thank you very, very much. All right.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abdul, for that insightful keynote presentation. Please, let's give him another round of applause. So we'll now move to the highlights of today's program, which is the panel session on catalyzing bankable PPPs through the infrastructure project preparation facility. To moderate this session, we have Engineer Iyaneson Ekanem of the NESG. Engineer Ekanem is the thematic lead for water and sanitation thematic group, and a distinguished panel will join him. On the panel, we have Dr. Jobson Osedion Ewalefo, the DG of Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission, who is ably represented by Mr. Yusuf Aruna, his technical advisor. Please let's welcome him. Welcome, sir. Also on the panel, we have Ms. Ebumasa Yete. She's the Senior Advisor on Sector Development and Financing Office of the Managing Director. Please, let's welcome her. Also, we have Dr. Mahmoud Alfa, the CEO of Vibranium Capital. Please, let's welcome. We also have Sarah Ngoroje Wanjao. Sorry if I mispronounced. She's an infrastructure finance and PPP specialist and SNW Consulting Group. Please let's welcome her. Welcome. And last but not the least, we have Mr. Peter Akweye. He's an associate vice president, project development at the African Finance Corporation. Welcome. So I will now leave them to it. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm hoping they'll move this very soon so you can see me, okay? All right, thank you everyone for making it here. So first is that it's a small group, and the idea is that to discuss this with key stakeholders first, then we'll take that forward. Now, at the 31st Nigerian Economic Summit, there's a session called CEO Roundtable on Infrastructure. So since this is a pre-summit event, at the CEO event where we'll have the top CEOs from either Dangote Group or Boa Group or Julius Berger, all the top CEOs will have a roundtable at the summit. What the outcome of this event will be presented at that roundtable. And so we're taking it very serious because what we have in this room now is the key stakeholders in the sector. We will propose to these CEOs that can take it forward to ensure that we have the political backing to the outcome of this session. So thank you very much for coming. And we hope that we'll make this very interactive. I want you to engage the very strong panel we have today. First is that the panel was carefully selected to ensure that, one, we have government represented because government is the entity that will drive project preparation facility, make it happen. Secondly, to ensure that we have investors on the panel, either private capital investors or institutional investors. That way we will understand what they look for in terms of bankable projects. And so with the panel, the strong panel we have a very good presentation as well. We just had a good one from Abdul, giving us the background to infrastructure situation in Nigeria, what we've gone through over the years, what the mechanisms we've put in place that were not very effective. And so the objective is that after this session, we'll try to create a framework that will make PPF effective going forward. Thank you very much, panel, for being here. And I'm very excited. I know everyone on this panel. And so we'll try to make it very interactive and make sure that we also get from the audience questions they may have, and so that we can respond to everyone. But first, we're going to have 3 levels of discussion. The first level is about bankability. We want to understand, what does it really mean? Because every time we hear the project must be bankable or the project is not bankable, okay? We want to understand, what does it really mean from the government perspective, from the private investor perspective, and also for the institutional investor perspective. The second level is about the PPF. How can that be effective? Because we've had PPF in Nigeria in the past. From Abdul's presentation, you will notice that there was an entity that provided funding for us to develop projects, to prepare projects, but it wasn't effectively utilized. So how do we make that effective going forward? If the federal government has made provision in the budget for project preparation fund, why is it not unlocked? And how can we make it effective so that we can get bankable projects? And the third level is, what other reforms do we need in the infrastructure space to make PPF effective? Because PPF alone may not be able to unlock the private capital we're looking for. And so what other reforms do we need? Sitting as an institutional investor or a private investor, what other reforms do we need? Also sitting as government. That way, as we design the PPF framework, we can make sure those reforms are happening at the same time. Thank you very much. So I want to start with my boss. Yusuf used to be my boss, eh? Then he fired me. I cried, but he didn't listen. All right, so Yusuf, I'll come to you first because one, ICRC is central to infrastructure development in Nigeria, particularly using public-private partnership. And we know you interact with a lot of investors, but we also know that you get a lorry load of projects from the ministries, department, and agencies of government. What do you look at as ICRC to say this project is bankable? What does that mean to ICRC?
Good morning. We're glad to be here, and I extend the courtesies of the Director General, Dr. Jobson Ewalefo, who would have loved to be here, but he had to be on other assignments outside the country. We're glad to be the only government agency on this panel who shows the importance you're attached to the ICRC and the relationship between the ICRC and UKNIF. Yeah, well, we're not taking anything for granted, we're not taking it lightly. As you're all aware, in the last 1 year, the ICRC has gone through a lot of transformation. With the new leadership, a lot is happening. And that's why we're happy to be on every platform, on every forum, to sit down, share experiences, take advices, and see how we can make this thing work better, how we can improve the ecosystem. For us, bankability simply means the ability to attract financing into a project. And that boils down to a lot of issues. One is the level of risk, the quality of the risk assessment that you're coming with, the level of technical studies you've done, the quality of the promoters. Because let me say something. I mean, a lot of narratives have been put on the screen, which are okay, but a lot of them have been overtaken. I'm talking from a point of experience, from a point of somebody who has done this for 20 years. So most of these things are standards. But the truth is, a lot of these things, we've passed those stages and we've already addressed a lot of these issues. So as we move on, I'm sure I will come in and actually try to guide and try to give the audience the reality and the reality of what is happening and what is, and the progress and the processes we put in place to address a lot of issues. So first, bankability is basically ability to attract financing, and that speaks mostly to the issue of risk. How well are the risk issues addressed in any proposal that's coming to us? How strong are the people promoting this project? Because always an important thing. At every point, we want people to have a skin in the game. So we're looking at the capacity and the strength of the promoters. Thirdly, we're looking at how do you manage issue of volatility? Because we've had situations where, I mean, because of bureaucratic bottlenecks in Nigeria, it takes so long to achieve, to get approvals administratively. So what structures do you have to address those volatilities within approvals or within government agencies? So all those are structures that you need in place, for bankability. That's from our own side, from the government side. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Yusuf. I think you've mentioned quality, risk, and the strength of promoters. Yeah. Now, Ebun, I'll come to you because you have been in this space for a while, and you've seen, projects from different perspectives. Same question. However, we need to relate it to what ICRC just said in terms of quality, risk, and the strength of promoters. Because the challenge would be, if I'm promoting, is it well prepared, which goes to quality. So from your perspectives, having been, very active in the space, what does bankability really mean? Thank you.
Hello. Good morning, Ebun Meshaete. So 9 months ago, I joined the technical advisory team of the managing director of the Rural Electrification Agency. But I didn't just fall out of the sky. Before 9 months, I spent about 16 years in project development offices and functions. I was part of APM Terminals. APM Terminals is a transport and logistics arm of Maersk. Ports and inland logistics centers. So APMT, because it was trying to scale and roll out across. So I joined APMT in 2008 when, this is relevant to your question, I promise. I joined APMT in 2008, 2 years after APMT won the concession in APM Terminals at Papa. Management program, then I became business analyst. One of the first things I was asked to do as a business analyst was to deploy an operating model for the expansion of the Apapa facility. And that request was made because we had a corporate office that was going to put together a proposal for internal approval at the board of APMT. So I have been a product developer in an infrastructure business operating at scale. Leaving APMT in 2019, I joined InfraCredit. Coincidentally, about the time where the CEO of InfraCredit recognized that I have a pot of money to offer guarantees, but I have a deal flow problem. So I need to find a way to pull in resources that are not just core financing expertise, but someone that has a line of sight for how projects need to be prepared in a way in which they're attractive to investors. You don't only need financial or legal expertise for that. You need technical expertise, commercial expertise behind the scenes to be able to develop projects in that way. So we ran through a series of pilot programs where one of them was, the first one was a toll road project with a state government, where the state government basically came to us with 3 or 4 sheets of paper on a slide and said, this is a project that I need to raise money for, but there was nothing underneath it. So I was given the job of hiring the advisors and managing them to deliver a project that the transaction team on infra credits could then take through the bond raise process. Then I joined the REA at a strategic time when the REA is recognizing that they need to organize themselves a little differently if they want to address the sustainability issues in the rural energy off-grid space. So I wanted to give you that context so that you understand the answers that I give. So bankability thank you very much. Yusuf from ICRC has rightly pointed out is the ability to attract capital. And what are the main things? He has mentioned risk, but there are core risks. One of the core risks are the revenue risk. What is the revenue potential of this project? Is it a purely socially driven project where the viability is, the commercial viability is not so high, but the social benefits are high enough, so the government needs to figure out a way to plug a viability gap? Because it's difficult to talk about PPPs or large-scale infrastructure without discussing project finance. And you can't talk about project finance if you do not have a clear line of sight to the project cash flows. Project cash flow, what is coming out of this project? First question, what level is it coming out as? Is this something that will need to be shored up by steady inputs from government? So if it's a heavily social impact-driven project, or is a project like maybe a rollout of government hospitals, for instance, or a project that is a balance between social and economic, like transport or roads, or a project that is heavily commercial, like ports, there are various levels of cash flows that are generated. And we need to be able to understand that to answer the revenue risk problem varies for these types or mixes of projects. So that is one thing we need to be careful about. That's one important part about bankability. Linked to bankability is also the structure or the way risks have been identified, but also embedded with the right party. So one of the things that we very quickly were encouraged to learn how to use was a risk matrix tool. Your risk matrix is what is the risk, who is the best party on the project structure that this risk is best embedded with, and what do I put in the agreement with this party to ensure that they bear the risk properly. So if you are building a new site, and so your construction risks you attach to your EPC. If you are operating and maintaining, your operations and maintenance risks, revenue collections, etc., you attach to your operator. If the challenge is offtake, you embed that risk in your offtake agreement. So beyond knowing the risk is putting effective countermeasures in place and embedding them in contracts that protects the project. Then a big part linked to that, which we often forget, is environmental and social risks. There's nothing today that is not built on a piece of land somewhere. So how is this land acquired in a way in which does not create issues later? So I'll pause here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So you've taken us to the nitty-gritty of what you would look at in terms of determining bankability. Now I'll come to the investor in the room. Investors really take risk because they put in their money and they are not sure if they're going to get it back. And so, Mahmoud, you sit there, you invest in projects. And so we need to understand what determines, what's the background to your decision to make an investment in the project, and basically saying, well, what makes a project bankable for you?
Thank you very much. Hello. We look at a few things, predictable execution and credible preparation. But for most businessmen, I don't think
the mic.
The conversation ends in the balance sheet, profit and loss. So if I was dealing with a private entity like Urban Shelter, the conversation will be different
Okay.
than if I was just dealing with ICRC, for example. So with them, it's typically entry and exit.
Okay.
What kind of profit margins are we looking at? All right. But with government, it's slightly different. There are social needs. You know, they do certain projects to achieve certain social needs in the country, right? So it's not necessarily a Naira and Kobo initiative per se. But for us, it's a Naira and Kobo initiative. I'm raising $100 million towards a project. I'd like to know that one, my money is safe and guaranteed. And then two, I'll make some returns on that. And that way I can make such mentions to whoever my investors are. So for me, my contribution will be a question really in the project selection process. Who determines what projects we take in this country and how do you select the process?
Okay.
That's where you will take it back and then begin to ask the political economy questions that are in the room.
Okay.
And that way we risk, we begin to de-risk and then put mitigants in place. Yeah,
Okay, so ICRC comes up with a pipeline of projects, okay? And you sitting there, you're interested in investing. And they have, I mean, I know ICRC receives like 1,000 projects every month, but they now have to sieve it down to like maybe 10. And you're looking at 10 projects that maybe look interesting. You want to now look at the details, which one is going to be bankable for me to take the risk. Now that's from government side. What would you be looking at in those projects from ICRC to say that, okay, this is the one I should go for? Let's look at the government side now.
Yes, project preparation is very important. So I'll begin to ask questions like your stakeholder engagement. Again, you asked a question and I said, what is your project selection process? ICRC receives about 1,000 projects every year. From where? I'd like to know that. And then before we even begin to spoon feed the process and spool through what these projects are and if they are bankable or not, you are also giving me what is available. So what's available? Are these projects sensible enough for investors to put their monies behind? Right? The stakeholder engagement process in when you're doing your political economy analysis, was that also carried in? Then we can now come in and see and have conversations around whether it's profitable or not, or whether investors are interested in looking at that or saying. Like I said in the intro, government projects are mainly backed by an emotional, standpoint, right? We're thinking of whether it works for my people in Kogi State or Benue. For me, it's not. I don't care. I'm just trying to make money from the process.
Okay. Yeah. So that was blunt. Thank you very much. Yeah, that was blunt. But I think I like the part where you're saying, even though you're trying to make money, you're saying, have you engaged stakeholders? Because that might be where you lose money going down the line. But let's go to the institutional investor here. Peter, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're doing a lot outside Nigeria. Is that true? Now, so AFC, yeah. You're bullish presently. You're doing quite a lot. What's the incentive? Why are you bullish now? Why are you taking so much risk? What has made you decide that this real project is bankable? You know the real project I'm referring to. What decision did you take to say this real project is bankable, so that we can learn and also understand what you think when you say bankability?
Yeah, thank you for that. So maybe to give a bit of a background. So I'm with the project development team within AFC. And at AFC, so we have project development and then we have principal investment teams. So what we tend to do at the project development stage is to try and work with developers, co-develop projects or lead the development. And once we get them to that bankability stage, our principal investment team will come in with equity or debt. And for us, I mean, we are really happy to come in at that early development stage to ensure that the projects reach that bankability stage. And I mean, to answer broadly your question about that bankability and what we tend to look out for, we and a lot of my co-panelists has already mentioned the whole cash flow thing, and it's really about making sure that the project can generate long-term stable cash flows so that it's able to repay the debt and also to distribute make distributions to the equity stakeholders. And in doing this, it's really underpinned by what let's say the project company, the contracts between the project company and who the off-taker is, be it a government entity or directly to B2B sometimes, because we are looking at projects which is also B2B. So that contract that is underpinning it, is it, let's say the pricing model, for instance, is it something that the utility can pay? Is there a lot of subsidy, for instance, that is holding off the utility from being able to pay, and so you cannot see your long-term cash flow? So this is really important. And my sister also mentioned contracting. So contracting between the EPC, O&M, making sure that the contracts that you have are bankable contracts. The sort of liquidated damages that you might have in these contracts are back to back. So what damages the utility is giving you as a developer, you're also passing that on to your EPC contractor. So essentially transferring risk, and which is part of essentially making sure your risks are well managed. I think structuring itself is also quite important. So one of the things that we look out for is, I'll call it fallback plan, which is the securitization of the project. What is the government willing to sign an implementation agreement, for instance? So you know that the government has interest, you are able to get some sort of fallback plan if the project is not being paid per the contract. Are you able to attract political risk insurance, for instance, for the project? Are you able to price this in so that the project is bankable, the utility or who the off-taker is able to pay, because you are adding on all of these extra security costs to the project, for instance? So these are some of the things that we look out for. And at AFC, we don't just hand out the PD capital. We are actually involved in the process to make sure that we co-develop. Sometimes we lead the development. So for the Zambia Lobito Rail project that you mentioned, we are the lead developer for it. And we essentially trying to get all the project essentially bankable, structure it well, get agreements in place so that to be able to attract that long-term capital.
Excellent. So just a quick one on the fallback plan. Do you want to share, maybe an example? How is that structured with the government in terms of the fallback plan you have? Because that's more like a protection for AFC in case things go south. Yeah. So you want to share any example?
Yeah, so we led the development of the Red Sea power project. This is a 60 megawatt project in Djibouti. No one had done, there was no IPP project in Djibouti, but we went in there that early stage to essentially drive the entire project. And one of the key things that we did there was having to sign an implementation agreement with the government to say that there is the use of the rights of use of land, for instance. There is guarantees around payment. So if the utility was falling short of payment, there would be a payment for that. There is also guarantees from the government so that you are able to distribute your funds or move your funds outside the country. So things that essentially soften the land for you as an investor. So having the government to buy into the project, essentially it helps. We were able to do this, and was able to attract funds from FMO and climate fund managers as well to also co-invest in the project. So that implementation agreement with the government really helped in doing that.
Excellent. So thank you very much, Peter. I think what you've said is, apart from ensuring the cash flow looks good, you also put in place a mechanism to protect yourself down the line. Thank you. Sarah, you've been around the space, but particularly in Kenya, you've done quite a lot in terms of making sure that PPF works. Now, first, bankability, still on that. What do you see? What do you see to decide that it's bankable or it's not? Using your Kenyan experience, but also your experience working with the bank.
Okay, thanks, Gabriel. I think for maybe just taking a big picture approach, And this approach really coming from where I've previously been sitting. So I've been managing an advisory facility for the World Bank that covers Africa, but mainly covering East and Southern Africa for the larger part of my life. And I think when I say taking the bigger picture approach, it's really looking at bankability beyond what we look at when we're talking about technical feasibility, legal feasibility, but also looking at other factors that really speak to bankability around the enabling environment. And I think those are things that sometimes we don't put our eye on. So besides that, so it's looking at things like obviously the strong fundamentals for the projects that we are doing in terms of, is there clear demand for the projects that we are doing? Is the economics feasible for this project? And this is what Peter, I think, has been alluding to in terms of the tariffs and your revenue stream. Is that something that will ensure that this project is able to pay itself back? I think beyond that, there's things that we probably look at in terms of when you're thinking about bankability, and it's also looking at your legal framework within a country. Sometimes it's things that we don't think, and when a private investor is coming, those are the things that you're looking at. How sure am I that my investment is safe in this particular environment that I'm getting into? Secondly is the commitment from government. And that also comes from maybe what they've seen previously in terms of history. How many deals are getting cancelled? If I look at the case of Kenya, we had one particular project that came into being, but was done as a very hurried deal, and that was a railways project. And that has really given us a backlash in terms of private sector, because everybody comes to the table, remembers that deal that had to be cancelled and had a long protracted dispute. So they look at how committed is this government? What's the history of this government in terms of being able to support? So looking at those bigger factors around the enabling environment, I think is something that goes deeper beyond structuring projects and ensuring that the risk is allocated as should be. Then obviously then speaking to things that I think we're speaking to this morning, that those are kind of your bankability enhancers. And I would look at that being your project facilitation fund or PPF, whatever you call it, looking at ability to have things like viability gap funding that then really enhances the projects that you're working to, and maybe credit enhancements like guarantees that I think has also been mentioned on this table. So it's maybe taking a look as well as much as we are structuring the projects in terms of modeling, but also that big picture framework of what's the enabling environment around our projects, looking at to ensure that they're truly bankable.
Thank you very much. I think the key points that resonate across everyone is risk and how that is allocated, but also cash flow down the line, the demand side, who pays for what. But I think from the AFC, how do we protect ourselves? That way we don't get into trouble, down the line. And more importantly, the legal regulatory framework, because things may happen that you need the law to be on your side. So thank you very much. I think first we now have a common understanding of what bankability really means, because most times we hear, is this project bankable? It's not bankable. So I now know. I mean, I didn't know before today. Now I've learned. But it's clear that it's not just one item the investor will look at. There are multiple items they look at to say it's bankable or it's not. But there are some items as well they can manage. There are some items who can negotiate, but there are some that are standard. We cannot go below this. If you don't have this, then we are not coming. So that's what I understood from here. So next we go to the second level, which is about the PPF or PFF, Project Facilitation Fund or Project Preparation Fund. Basically means the investment you make to ensure the project is prepared well, basically. Now, the question to the panel is effectiveness. How can that fund be made effective? We've seen that fund in Nigeria and it wasn't effective. There are other clients we've seen where the fund has been applied, were very effective. How do we ensure that for Nigeria, we can make that fund effective? Okay, so first, ICRC, I think you're central to that, because I think our first attempt to a project preparation facility was through the ICRC. And that experience, I think we've learned a lot from that. But for now, going forward, what do you think can make a project preparation facility effective? Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. So as you said, we've had a PPF experience before, which was domiciled in the IC when we started before it was moved to the Ministry of Finance. And we've seen the issues why it wasn't successful. So, and these are very clear issues. Someone spoke about issues of ownership, and that's what my friend there spoke about. We had a big issue about ownership when we started the first PPF, because it was domiciled in the ICRC. I was on that team too. So the issue of ownership was a big issue. What we tried to do then was take over the projects from the MDAs and run them. And I remember we had the Kirikiri terminal, we had the silos, and we had the Onitsha River Port. As we said, at the end of the PPF, only one project was signed, and that was the silos. The others couldn't be signed. So what the numbers you put, were actually, underrated, because what we had was $114 million, and we couldn't spend $10 million out of it. So everything went back, and we had another $200 million in the CBN for VGF. So everything went back after 5 years. So it was actually a big failure, yeah. Yeah, but the issues were very clear. I worked in the BP 20 years ago, and what we did in the BP was the same thing we're bringing over. Take the projects from the MDS and want to run it. But the system has moved, the world has moved, Nigeria has moved. A lot of these things at this point cannot be done. And that was what we came to the ICRC with, trying to pick the projects and manage them. But at the end of the day, as we said, that when we issued the last circular, the last circular we did, these are concessions. These things at the end of the day will go back to the grantors, to the MDS. Why take them and hand them over to a different party to manage them for 20 years, then you bring them back? Where's the connection? So those were actually big issues for us. So even when we tried to get the project, even though we had the financing, nobody was willing to speak to us. Ministers have become really strong in the country then, and stronger now. So as we move on, we need to be extremely, very, very careful. And that is why from the ICRC part, we keep saying it. We are working closely with the MDS. The MDS are happy to sit down with us and have a conversation. There's nothing you cannot do with them. So the issue of no capacity, yeah, there are issues because it's not that there are no capacities. What happens is because there's no PPP cadre, by the time you train them, 3-4 years down the line, they are transferred. So you start afresh. So we've identified where the issues are. And these are some of the things we're trying to put in place to address. But good project preparation is a no-brainer. It's something that needs to be done, it's something that has to be done. And it's something that everybody needs to come in and see how we can do it. But luckily, the present government, has shown all the support we require. 42 billion for PPF within 2 years is huge. What have we done with the money? I'm not sure we've touched it yet.
Just, sorry, you've shared the experience from the $114 million. What should we do differently? Apart from saying, okay, it wasn't domiciled, so we didn't have control.
Stakeholder is important. When we are going forward, whatever we're doing, we need to bring the owners of the project as critical stakeholders for anything to be successful, which was the biggest mistake we made in the last one.
Do you mean the funding should have gone through the MDAs?
So the MDAs should manage their projects. They should hire their advisors. They should implement their projects. You sit behind and provide the financing for them, and that's the only way this will work. But if you want to come in, you bring the advisors, you do the evaluation, you do the procurement, they'll frustrate you. It won't work. And that is the issue some of the government agencies are having at the moment. And that's why from the ICRC, I think we've been pretty successful, because it's more a partnership for us dealing with them. It's more a partnership. Come together and let's say you own this project. We are regulators, we are not project owners. But let's see how we can support you. So that sense of belonging is very important. Because I'm sure none of you understand what I'm saying. A lot of the ministers are too, you can't even go close to them to even collect the project. It's not possible. BP had tried this for 2 years. They have not picked a single project in 2 years. So what that tells you is certain things we did 20 years ago must change for us to move forward. 42 billion is a huge, can do a lot for the country. And we're still struggling talking about money. Another issue is the financing is not a very big issue for me. Sincerely, it's not a very big issue, because normally or abnormally, most of what we are doing now are really unsolicited proposals from the Nigerian perspective, which maybe it shouldn't be, but that's what's happening. Over 89% of what you are doing are unsolicited. What that takes away a lot of the pressure of developing projects from us. The people coming in are taking all the risks. Before them to come in, they have identified their project. So it's a lot easier, unlike when we go solicited and it takes so long. So that seems to be an improvement from where we're coming from. But the biggest issue for success for me is the owners must be on the table for this to work. If they are not on the table, you can speak all the English, you can do all the frameworks, you can do all the policies. Sincerely, I mean, you won't go outside this room.
So yeah. I just want to
and talking from experience, and yeah, because he knows I came to ICRC to work on that project. That was why ICRC recruited me, and not to do any other thing. And we ran it for 5 years. We went to Ministry of Finance, worked with one minister, and he came back. Only 3 projects in 5 years, $140 million, nothing. So it's really very strange, yeah.
All right, please, just a quick word before you hand over the mic. I just want us to clarify something. I hope you're not promoting more of unsolicited, are you?
I'm not.
Okay. Okay.
But the truth is, so sorry,
Okay.
Can I just say something?
Because I don't want
no.
us to have that impression that you're saying unsolicited is.
We're not averse to it.
Okay.
And let's be clear sincerely. I mean, our reality is our reality. Yeah, whatever will make us get this infrastructure working, we do it. And it's actually a process, it's not an abnormality. It's actually a process. So we have a solicited and an unsolicited process. So it's an option. So there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, it's an option. Yeah.
I just wanted you to clarify so that because you sounded like, oh, it's easier, we will spend less time and it's faster. Yeah, but to
come to you, what it means is they have done their studies, they are sure of where their cash flows are coming from, they are sure of everything. So it makes it a lot easier. We have some solicited ones running too, but over 80-90% of what we are doing the last 2, 3, 4 years have been unsolicited. Maybe because the MDs are not able to develop projects because of the lack of funding. That might be the reason, yeah.
Yes.
Maybe, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so for what we get now is that learning from the PPF we had, the owners of the project should drive it. The funding can be applied, I mean, the payment can be done through another entity, but the owners should sit on the driving seat. That's what you're saying. Excellent. Okay. And it means the PPF we had, the owners were not driving that project. Perfect. You can pass it to them. Okay. No, it's you. It's you next. It's you next. Because I think ICRC has given us I would say the government perspective because they were the ones driving it. But now from your experience as a developer, how best do you think PPF can be effective? Meaning, so he has said, look, okay, unsolicited is fine, but I've seen 4-page unsolicited business case. Yeah, I can tell you. Say not approved. At least it comes to you first. So let's see from the developer side, how best do we make PPFs effective?
Okay, so first of all, I was looking at when the number that's a lot, $2.3 trillion in the next 18 years. That's a lot of money. Okay, but if we take the average benchmark, about maybe 5% to 10% of a project size to be the project development cost, that means we have a project development bill of $230 billion in 18 years. That's an average spread about $12.8 billion per year. So that means that we don't only have 2 financing challenges. We have construction finance challenge. We also have the project development finance challenge as well. Now, so that means that we also need to rethink how we structure project preparation and reward that effort in how projects are priced. So one of the things that I invite PPF to consider is how to attract more capital into it over and above what the government can allocate. And one of the first natural ways is adopt some of what's more popular in the tech space. I incubated a project, I took it forward at IPO, I get my multiple on top and exit. There has to be a version of that we build into this PPF. I know that we are saying that this is government. The natural reaction to anything from government is that it is free money. please let us not give project preparation as free money. We will run that facility down. So there must be return-seeking expectation on the project preparation facility. Now we must design it in a way in which that is not so prohibitive that people cannot, that government agency cannot access it. But I need you to give me back an outcome for this money that has been spent. So that is one thing I want to encourage, that we build into the expectation from day one of people accessing this capital. Number one. Number two is the back office of this PPF. Is the back office of this PPF, their capacity to very quickly vet value for money for projects. Dr. Mahmoud sitting beside me is what informs which projects we went on to. I'm from the transport sector primarily. I just joined the REA 9 months ago. I said so. My work history is heavy in the transport sector, and I have to say that every time I see an announcement of a new port, I just cover my face. I'm like, hey God, a new port, a new airport. I'm like, So we need infrastructure, but what type of infrastructure do we need? Sorry, if the ones that are in the country are not performing well, or there is just a natural trade route. So for the transport sector, there's a natural flow of cargo. Our seaports, you need to put a seaport where there's navigational access for deep water vessels, deep sea or deep water vessels. So, so that one is already the thing. But there is a trade routes that connects. So if we've not figured out how to connect our existing ports to the hinterland, why are we building new ones? But by God, I look at ICRC and I see both brand new greenfield and some, like if I leave value for money, public money, post-construction is what? It doesn't create new jobs if there's no guaranteed volume being generated or directed through. So we need to rethink the value for money assessment that allows us to select projects. So that framework has to be on point. If we're going to fulfill the first recommendation I made, i.e., our project preparation facility should not be considered free money. Then I want to also align with what Yusuf has said, ownership. Then this is private sector with private sector. I've been as a consultant supporting or hiring consultants on behalf of and I see a difference. If there are people on your end who are able to understand the project well enough, you are able to, there is a confidence with which we explain the project far better. So let's even strip out, the political, friction or trying to confirm relevance. Just practically, if I did something for you, it's harder for you to step in and take ownership of it than if I did it with you. So we need to build that ownership of the project and the project outcomes into it as well, in the design for how projects are selected and passed on. Then lastly, the back office. Please, let's not staff this PPF with only English-speaking lawyers and number-conscious financial analysts. No offense to them, I work with them a lot, but there has to be someone on the end of the PPF, as well as on the end of the MDA, that understands the nitty-gritty enough to tie it together. Some of the reforms that may be considered, sorry, I'm mentioning reforms, but it's a very important part, is maybe finding ways to strategically resource these MDAs that have to come with these projects so that these conversations can happen. So the back office of the PPA should be staffed with people with technical competence, with design, commercials, understanding. People will understand land acquisition, land value capture. It's the range of things that tie into that. I'll pause here. Thank you.
Directly, because she mentioned it should not be free money, yeah, and it should have return. Then also we should try to attract capital for PPF beyond government. Just to share from your experience, managing such, how did you achieve those, and how best do we make it effective in Nigeria?
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, so I think in looking at how to make them more effective, and maybe just I'll get to that point you're speaking to, it's also looking at how well are the institutions enabled that and aligned, the institutions that are dealing with the whole project facilitation. Because in the case of Kenya, and this time I'll speak specifically to Kenya, it's a very clear legally mandated there's a clear mandate existing legally. So, and the institutions that are dealing with it are very well outlined in that document. So it's not like there's a lot of players in the market who are looking to do to manage the facility. And in this case, it's really the directorate in the Ministry of Finance that's working with this. And the way it's been done, it's the Ministry of Finance under the directorate of the PPP unit is the officiating officer for this PFF. But the funds are then held within the Central Bank of Kenya. So that's perhaps the fact that it's already something that's first, it's been legally bound and there is a legal act to it. There is regulations that govern how it's run. So that's really helped to make a very clear path on who are the institutions dealing with it and what exactly they need to be doing. So that's very well placed, and that makes it easy. In terms of how they are capitalizing it, they've looked at various ways to do it. And so there is seed capital that's been given by the World Bank. And this is under one of the bank projects, I think, that Abdul mentioned. So part of that money from the IFPP project has been used to capitalize the project preparation fund. But beyond that, it's a recycling kind of fund that for every transaction that's successful, then there is a success fee that's paid back to the facility. So then that goes back to fund other projects. I think also the other areas, it's kind of, it has 3 windows, and the 3 windows speak to one is more of a capacity building window that really funds the entity, the directorate, in terms of what they're doing. So building their capacity, building the capacity of the MDAs, and that's really coming from the grant money that the bank has given for that particular bit. The second one is around project preparation. And for them, it's really the MDAs making an application to receive this money and then running the projects on their own. So it's not, it takes away, it makes sure that the ownership is held by the contracting authority in every case. But lastly, is these are the last bit, the last window is the one that kind of gives the last mile push for some of these projects. And that's really where they have the viability gap funding and as well as the contingent liability. So that's kind of bundled up into the third window to assist them to move. But in terms of the capitalization, it's obviously coming from the exchequer. It's looking at development finance institutions coming to put in money into this fund. And again, now this revolving fund to ensure that there's constant funding and replenishment of the fund.
Thank you very much. So consultants in the room, there goes your success fee. We now have to channel success fee to fund PPF, okay? But clearly, I mean, Kenya has really made good use of PPF, and I think we need to learn from that. But going to the investors in the room, so I'll start with AFC. How best, now you've been developing projects yourself. How best do you think we should manage that? Because if you develop projects and make sure they are well prepared, how best do you think Nigeria can set up such a fund and make it effective?
Okay, so I think there are a few things, and I'll try to drill down a bit on what all the panelists have said here. So I think it's quite important that you would have some sort of implementing entity that would, so apart from that custodian or fund manager that's looking at the portfolio, the entire fund itself, but then you need that implementing entity, which is, which draws all the different skill sets in it so that they are able to actively engage and be part of the development process itself. So it's not just about applying for funds and then giving it to the project. But then you need that implementing entity to be part of developing the project, co-developing it, and signing some sort of. So what we tend to do is to sign a joint development agreement, normally with the sponsor or the developer, so that we are also part of the process, right? So that helps us to look at the governance of the project preparation, the development process itself, and then things that I think will really help in making it effective. One, you look at how the projects are selected. So, for instance, would you rather try to fund a project which has been in development for the past 5-7 years and has so much sunk cost, to compare to, let's say, a project which is 2 years and has made some pre-feasibility work? So that strategy in selecting your project is quite key. And then what is the fund financing? So are you just financing the entire cost, whatever the sponsor, the developer is bringing? So for instance, for AFC, we tend to finance for all the development costs, we tend to finance the external development cost only. So we'll look at all the consultant costs, the advisory costs, permitting costs, rather than looking at internal travel and accommodation. So we want to have our funds channeled directly to adding value to the project. So that's quite key. And how that capital is also disbursed is also important. So we would look at a milestone led disbursement, so that if you need, say, 2 million development capital, we don't dump 2 million to the project, but then there'll be clear milestones that are pre-agreed. So once a project is stalling and it's not moving forward, it means that you are not getting the capital. So what we tend to do, once that milestone A is met, we would now fund what you need to achieve milestone B. Once milestone B is met, we'll fund what is needed for milestone C. So I think that milestone-led approach helps, so that the capital loss is protected. So that's quite key. And I think forming a steering committee, not just at the fund level, but then at the project level itself, to ensure that decisions are made rigorously, and you look at how the development plan it's going, how the cost is being managed. So I think these are some of the things that really makes getting this PPF effective. That active engagement, so that the implementing entity is part of the development process, milestone-led disbursement, making sure the steering committee is at the level of the projects themselves. And then I think one other thing, you tend to find projects where sponsors, developers want you to fund at the corporate level. And then essentially they would now disperse the funds how they want it. No, you'd want to channel the funds directly to the projects. And as I mentioned earlier, normally you want to do that for external third-party cost, which adds more value to the project.
Yeah, so I think we've, again, there's a lot we can learn from AFC, because I see you've done this and you've got the experience. We need to learn from that, because it's easy to just fund the PPF and the team goes for workshop sessions internationally, and the money is depleted very quickly. And so, yes, it's important that you determine what is being financed through the PPF, but also disbursement process, and the milestone approach is a very good one. So I think it's a lot to learn. We can really design a proper PPF framework, using your experience as well. So thank you very much.
We do project development advisory as well. So yeah, I think we can support in all of this.
No, we are not paying you for we are not going to pay you for it. We'll come to your office and sit down for some time, but thank you very much. I mean, you can talk to ICRC. The fund is domiciled with them, so they can pay. Okay, Mahmoud, I'll come to you now.
Sorry, mine was just a comment. I think imaging plays a huge role in what we do. I promised I was going to be respectful.
Yes.
I think it's arrogance on the side of government. For most PPs to work, you need to both be in alignment. You don't need a bully on one hand insisting this is what we want, while you insist that an investor will bring his money where he doesn't feel safe. I think we should find a way to, repair that facade first. With credit, there's a C that is important, and that's character. So on the government side, we need to build that character first before you have investors that are, that will trust you enough to bring in such liquidity into the system. That's my boss is here, so I have to be very careful with things that I say.
But ICRC, do you want to respond to that?
Let's make a little than it.
I saw that coming.
No, but I think it's important. I mean,
Yes.
sincerely, totally agree with him.
Okay.
And what we keep saying is the PPPs are partnerships. So, I mean, you need two people to make these things work. I've been noticed, we just issued the new guidelines now. And what we've tried to achieve in the new guidelines is to protect every party as much as possible, not just the government. These people are bringing in money and they need to have that. They need to feel safety. They need to feel covered. And that's what, that's what the new guidelines has tried to address. And even the summit we held, these conversations were held over 2 days. I mean, most of you were there. So I agree with you. I mean, this arrogance of government, I mean, needs to end. And let's sit down and work as partners, and let's see how we can make this thing work. So going forward, I mean, and luckily, this government has been very open for business. Yeah, there's nothing we've tried to push that has not gone through. So what it means is this, I mean, this layback attitude, I mean, is no more. So I mean, as much as possible, whatever we take to the table goes through. A good example is the money we have for PPF. We've never had it. We've been on this for 15 years since ICRC was created. And within 2 years, we have 42 billion. What that tells you is that, I mean, the political will is there for these things to work. And when we issued the guidelines, we were very clear. Things like negotiation and everything, we want to lead from the front as ICRC. We want to facilitate. We want to coordinate.
Don't go there.
Wait, no, I know we'll get there, but let me put it on the table. And what we are trying to do is to make sure as much as possible, I mean, everybody comes in, I mean, and has somebody who's a neutral person in the middle. Yeah, we've had these questions coming. I know it will come. I mean, let me just put it here. So we try to make sure we lead. Leading doesn't, not lead, no, sorry, we try to make people facilitate. Not lead.
You see where you're going?
We try to facilitate. Because we find situations where we push, we find where we're pushing projects and it stays for a year, 2 years, just to give a decision. And we can't go on like this. The macroeconomic variables are changing every day. So what we try to do is, as much as we want to lead from the front, want to get involved, we should be able to sit down, call the parties, come sit down and negotiate. It mustn't be the MD at every point calling you, I mean, when they are ready to call you. So, and that's why, I mean, we want to play a more active role. I mean, we want to be regulators, we remain as regulators, we are not operators. But at the same time, we're not going to sit down and allow you work at your own pace. The deficit in infrastructure is huge. I mean, then everybody has spoken about 2.3 trillion. I mean, so the attitude must change from all sides. So, and for ICRC, we are willing to, I mean, to give their leadership. Yeah, so I agree with you, Abdul. Government will be a lot more responsive going forward. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I was just hoping, you see, I was just hoping you won't go to the, ICRC leading negotiations. No, I was hoping you are not going to go to lead, because in your guidelines you've released, you said you're going to lead negotiations. It's clearly specified there. And so, sorry, let me finish. Let me finish. If you're going to change that to facilitate, okay, let that be in the guideline as well. Issue a guideline that is facilitate, because the guideline has gone around the whole world, I can assure you. And it's been broken down in detail. ICRC leads negotiation is a statement there. On whose behalf? You keep saying MDA would take the driving seat, but you say you're going to lead negotiations. That's one. Two, the impression you get as an investor that ICRC is leading negotiation. Do you understand? Or the backseat position of the MDA where ICRC says, I'm leading negotiation. Do you understand? So if you're changing it to facilitating or fast tracking, or I mean, I understand where you're going in terms of things are taking so much time to conclude because the MDAs are not proactive. But if you're changing the language, I think everybody needs to get that change as well, because it has gone round and there's some impression that has created. I don't know if you want to respond to that. It has created some impression.
All right, so I mean, 2 weeks ago, we were at the Fraser suit to launch our new guidelines and the updated ones. I don't know how many of you have gone through that. I think it's very clear. In the new guidelines here, what we're doing is facilitate and coordinate negotiations. If you look at the solicited proposal guide and the unsolicited proposal guide, it's very clear. That's what's on our website. So, I mean, just for clarity this year. Just for clarity, yeah. Thank you.
So I think we need to, spread the new one, the updated guideline. Okay, yeah, let's make that go viral as well, because the original one went viral. This one has not gone. Yes. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing that up. All right. Clearly, we've learned a lot from the panelists with respect to how best we can manage the PPF and how best we can structure the PPF and to make it effective in Nigeria. Is something we're going to take forward. But lastly, other reforms that are necessary. Now, PPF alone may not necessarily unlock private capital. Yeah, we're going to come to the room. Let's just finish the 3 levels. PPF alone may not be able to unlock the private capital we're looking for. What other reforms do you think are necessary? Okay. I don't know. I'll start with you, AFC. Peter, what other reforms do you think are necessary to ensure that even though we design and structure PPF's framework properly, those aspects that may impact the effectiveness of the PPF, not directly within the PPF, but external, so that we can drive those reforms as we set up the PPF properly? What aspects of reforms in the space are necessary to ensure PPFs can be effective?
So, I mean, I think one of the things that we could look at, and this is something that we highlighted in our 2025 State of Infrastructure report, AFC State of Infrastructure report, was mobilizing domestic capital. So we identified that I think the whole of Africa has about 4 trillion of domestic capital from pension funds, from commercial banks, and all of that. So I think specifically for even Nigeria, there's a lot of funds that is held up by the pension funds. So if there was some reforms so that these pension funds are able to invest in infrastructure bonds, infrastructure funds, I think it will help once you are able to develop, prepare projects to bankability. You'll be able to attract some of these pension funds to be able to come and invest in the project. And then I think, I mean, there are reforms such as decentralizing the approval process for PPP infrastructure projects. I think the threshold is anything below 20 billion, but I mean, that can be looked at if that amount can be revised so that there's some more smoothness in terms of how PPP projects are approved. And then we can also look at institutional capacity, essentially making sure that institutions have that capacity to be able to help in negotiating projects, to be able to bring a lot more transparency in the process. I think one thing that sort of hurts a lot of projects in Africa is that perceived risk that comes with developing projects in Africa instead of real risk. So I think Nigeria can champion things like transparency in the way processes are approved. We can look at showcasing success stories, things that have gone right already, so that people out there, investors out there, will know that indeed you can bring in capital, and that perceived risk can be minimized. So I think these are some of the things that can help.
You can pass it to Sarah.
Thanks.
So same question. Yeah.
So,
I know that there are a number of reforms you had to carry out to ensure not just capital coming to PPF, but also capital going to projects. So what reforms would you recommend?
So I think the one that Peter just spoke to is one of the ones that we've really pursued. And that's, you discover that there's so much money sitting with pension funds, with insurers that could really be committed. So there is a big move towards trying to deepen capital markets so that then we are also able to tap into that, financing. But I think also looking into sustainability has been another area where the country is really looking to, and that's really looking at green and climate financing for some of these projects. And even as we try to do, I think the third window that I spoke to, viability, there really is a push to try and do that for projects that are also have climate considerations. Because I think with projects, I think the capital risk, the climate risk is a big thing that once factored is also making pricing of our projects quite expensive. So just mitigating that risk has really been a big push in terms of creating efficiency. The other one I would say is institutions, really ensuring that the institutions have capacity, but beyond capacity, that some of the processes that have been done are also being kind of standardized in a sense. So you're getting templates for some of the things that are getting done so that there's not constant reinvention of them. And that makes it maybe much more efficient to do the projects. And then the last one I would speak to is, even as you do the projects, it's just ensuring that these projects are aligned to national projects so that there is prioritization of the projects and it's just not ad hoc financing of projects all over the place. And so that ensuring, one of the things that has been done is ensuring that there's a steering committee that ensures that all our projects are actually the national pipeline projects that have really been already pre-approved, and they're the ones that are able to tap into the facility.
So the last part where you mentioned the projects should be on the pipeline is quite important, because I think we have a structure that says we have a infrastructure master plan, and those projects should naturally move to pipelines. And those are the projects that should qualify for PPF. I think there's a gap between projects moving from what is the decision of government in terms of infrastructure we want to develop to what is being implemented. So I think that's the gap we need to fill. ICRC, I'll come to you on that. The transitioning from a master plan to budget. How do we ensure that we close that gap that is there now, where we do a national development plan that includes infrastructure plan, we have an integrated infrastructure master plan, then you now see projects that are not on the plan. How do we close that gap to ensure that we have a pipeline that is consistent, and so investors can see long-term what projects are coming to pipeline and what projects the government is going to procure very soon? Sorry. I hope I've not put you on this.
Please do. Thank you so much, Gabriel. So that takes us to the issue of the national project pipelines, which is something, we've spoken about repeatedly. And since the coming of Mr. Bagodo as minister, we've had a few engagements with him on how to come up with the national pipeline. From the SAIC part, we've always published this pipeline of projects. But as he said, those ones most times are aligned to the national development plan, because those are lists that comes from the MDA. We screen them and we put them up. But I think we want to move a step further. Sit down with National Planning Commission, which we've started doing, and see how we can come up with a national pipeline of projects that are impactful, that are transformative in the country. Because that's, and that's supposed to be the role of actual National Planning Commission. Yeah, and that's part of what the ICRC is trying to do in a strategic engagement. Let's sit down and talk to whoever has a role to play in this space. Let's see how we can move forward. So one of the very key ones now is the national pipeline of projects, and that's something we're working on with the Ministry of Budget and National Planning. Hopefully by the time we're done, it will make the implementation of the PPF a lot easier. We can tie the PPF to the national pipeline of projects. So at that point, something we're running more smoothly than just running all over the place looking for projects. That you're not sure how strong they are or how deep thought through. We have done before putting them on the pipeline. So for the issue of pipeline, something is going on. A lot of conversations are going on. Yeah, and let me speak on the issue of the PPF2. the one with the Ministry of Budget. We had a committee. Yeah, we've had a few meetings actually. And this issue of, what do you call it? This issue of the governance structure is something we've discussed repeatedly. From our own side, we have a position. I mean, and just like what the last speaker said that when he gave those slides, we feel there should be a PMU unit accepted. There will be a steering committee accepted. But I mean, those should be agencies that are not players, that are not operators. That's the only way you have this fairness. That's the only way you have a lot more control. But if you are somebody who is a grantor and center and you're holding funds for every other person, it doesn't work. And that's what we feel is, I mean, the budget office should be the PMU. We are not interested. I mean, SCRC was mentioned, but we said, no, take us out of it. We are regulators. We don't want to hold any money from the SCRC side. But let's have a structure that, I mean, that will give everybody comfort, that will give everybody confidence. We thought, I mean, the PMU should be in the budget office of the Federation. The Minister of Budget can be the steering committee headed by the minister and some other players. Yes. So the PMU being in the budget office doesn't mean everybody there has to be a staff of the budget office. As she said, I mean, you must get all the level of expertise you need to create a project team. But just at every point, we know this is where it's domiciled. So for us, I mean, it's a better way to make these things work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yusuf. I think that's another reform that will help the PPF, because if we can reform how projects are selected from a development plan, then the PPF will now naturally have projects that have government priorities, because we assume that the projects that we have on the National Development Plan are priorities of government. And so those are the projects that will come to the PPF for further preparation. Ebun, I don't know if you have
I do.
Okay.
So I have a wish list. I recognize I might be quite naive with this list, but I want to read it out, and maybe if there are people in this room that gets the conversation to the levels, and then we can see. So one of them is, so I'll just write off the comment that Sarah and Peter have mentioned about deepening institutional capacity. Deepening access of the capital markets. So this idea is actually not mine, but it's something that I really resonated with. So I will just repeat it, but I'll give credit to the person. So a former colleague and I were on the panel on Saturday, and one of the things that he was asked was, how do we attract institutional investors to market, the PFAs, insurance companies? And one of the things he recommended was there are reforms already happening with PENCOM trying to have alternative instruments as part of the, as it be included in the asset class that PFAs can invest in. I know that even before that, there is also there's also a maximum limit of the portfolio that PFAs can have with infrastructure.
5%.
Infrastructure. Okay, so he recommended that we don't only have an upper limit, we have a lower limit as well. Let's be honest, there are many things that are competing for capital in this country, and some of the most lucrative deals are not the heavy duty, heavy lifting projects, project preparation driven deals that infrastructure is typically known for as an asset class. Why will I allocate capital to something that is relatively more stressful, if not necessarily made to do it, but at least encouraged in a meaningful way? So we can have a very, very low limit, as low as possible, but there is an expectation that there is a part of your portfolio that you can attach to this scale. It's something that we should consider, right? Especially since there are other instruments that are more easier to understand, less stressful, and have higher returns. So it's I don't want us to seem as bullies, because he's also absolutely right, but find a way to have a lower limit in this policy definition as well is something. Like I said, this is a wish list, right? Now, part of my wish is also that we have a designated court of arbitration. So one of the underlying principles of partnership is the good faith between parties. If that faith somehow breaks, either genuinely for force majeure intentionally, there has to be a path to a resolution that will be binding. It is difficult for just a court in Nigeria to bind the federal government. So one of the things I encourage the PPF to do, especially if they're hoping to attract international parties to partner with us in PPPs, is to select the court of arbitration and commit to being bound. Again, we not being bound by everything. We will work out the fine details, but the core principle is if there is a quarrel between us, who is allowed to resolve it and ensure that whatever is said will be bound on both parties. We need, like I said, this is a wish list. I don't know if it will be solved in my generation, but these are the things that really matter, that will move the conversation forward in a material way. The second is we want to reform our Land Use Act, 1978. Again, I keep coming to this issue of land. He's shaking his head. Like I said, this is a wish list. But listen, we can't expect private capital to come into projects that will be suddenly disrupted because we did not. And one of the things that we can consider with the reform is even because one of PPPs, a lot of times government don't contribute capital. They contribute land into this. So how do we value the government's contribution as land into this and ensure that that land value capture is priced in to a reasonable extent, but also practically find ways to distribute some of those returns to the entities that might have that land was expropriated from in securing this. So these are things that we want to consider with long-term projects that last. Now, on my wish list, maybe this might be the easiest, relatively easiest one to resolve. It will be data collection and management. I think one of the most strategic partners for this PPF will be the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics. I say this because they have found ways to warehouse. They don't only collect inflation data and GDP. They report on sector, but some of these sectoral reports are not updated as frequently. Like the last time I looked, I tried to find updated information on airports. Is stopped at 2021. From the port sector, I don't see what's the MPA reports reflected on. We need a way in which we encourage these parties, especially for the ones that drive, and then also the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. I say agriculture because, again, coming from transport and logistics end, we don't have a food security issue if we resolve the logistics issue for protecting the assets and transporting them safely. But how do you aggregate information on the scale of what you're deploying these assets to if you don't even understand which local governments prepares or hosts what? So there is a decentralization and information asymmetry that we need to find a way to strategically resolve. I'm not sure about the design of this reform, but there has to be intentionality that the heavy-duty infrastructure assets, the baseline information that feeds it, these ministries, these MDAs have to find a way to be encouraged, rewarded, resourced to collect this information and aggregate it, because then we're very easily able to then solve the concept issue that we have. I look at data at an aggregate level, and I say, okay, this is why I chose to deploy this in this place. That is an easier conversation than this emotional reaction that we have. Okay, my community is lacking this or something. Thank you.
Thank you very much. When you mentioned rewarded, I saw MDAs nodding clearly. So it's important they are rewarded as well. But Mahmoud, I'll come to you now. She mentioned lower limit. I know you're sitting beside AFC that is doing billions of dollars, but also you're looking at
very, very far from that.
You're looking at billions of naira. So how do you see that lower limit? What reforms do you think are necessary to ensure that we can attract that lower limit as well?
So for me, I think even before going to the issue of reforms, risk allocation is a big deal for me. If I was dealing with urban shelter, would carefully analyze our risks and see how we share those risks, right? So with government, you're asking, how do we overemphasize what we stand to lose as a people if such and such doesn't go through? Does that make any sense? Right? So that for me is where I'm having some challenges. What do you stand to lose? I stand to lose a lot. As a businessman, if I stop, I die. As government, it's just another intervention we've gone wrong. So what do you stand to lose? I think we should add that to whatever component of,
Yeah, but also how do you protect yourself? So for instance, AFC has shared some guarantee instruments, some fallback instruments, what do you think we can do at this level locally? Apart from infra credit, supporting some guarantees, what else do you think is necessary to allow you to take risk?
Honestly, for us, the local players is to be backed by big players like them. And they will give us the guarantees that we require to also participate in the sort of deals that we want to participate with the government. Yeah.
Does he need you?
Yes.
Okay. AFC, do you need him? You can just do the exchange here. you can discuss here now.
I have the political economy that he doesn't have.
Okay.
I have the local knowledge that he doesn't have.
Perfect. Perfect.
We do.
Okay. So it's clear that on the institutional development side, you're more comfortable dealing with them. But if you want to deal with ICRC is saying we are reforming today, we are releasing guidelines. What do you want them to do to include in their guidelines to ensure that you can engage with them directly as well?
Simply put, show me what you stand to lose. And that will be my currency.
Okay. As government, you think they will lose anything? Eh? Okay, so we're going to go to the No, you're not saying anything. No.
No, but it's important. I mean, he needs to understand, they actually comfort, and government stands to lose so much too. Yeah, because part of what we're doing, part of the guidelines is come up with the draft model contract. And inside that model contract, you're looking at things about termination payments, compensation clauses. Those things will always exist. And for clarity, without being arrogant, since the SCS came in 2010, no concession has been cancelled. All the ones we've been having issues with were the ones that were done when there was no legal and regulatory framework for PPPs in Nigeria. But since we came in 2010, there's none that we have done that has been cancelled. We might have issues that will go to arbitration, but cancellation is off the table because those contracts, we try to make sure the protection are there, and government has so much to lose, if they overstretch. So just for clarity, Mr. Mahmoud, yeah. So, but I understand where you're coming from, yeah. But before the SCIC came in, there are a lot of issues. Government goes in, chase people out of sites. But since we came in, we made sure, we are playing the role of regulators here. So I understand where it's coming from. But since we came in sincerely, those things are things of the past. I will try to make sure when we go into contracts, it has to be what everybody agrees. It's not just what government says. Because you can't, one party cannot sign a contract. So if you're not comfortable, there's no contract. So we're conscious of it. Thank you.
Okay. I think the word cancellation has to be redefined. Or termination, or dormant, or inactive, or we can have a lorry load of words to define some of these PPs we have. But I think what you're saying is we've not terminated or canceled anyone. But I think, we need to look at some that are not very effective, and we can learn from them as well. Okay, so do you have microphone? We're coming to the bigger house now. I know there are several questions. I saw a lot of heads going side to side and up and down. You want to take one of these? Thank you. So please, the procedure is you tell us your name, where you work, and straight to your question. Let's not have another Abdul presentation as a comment.
Show of hands. Any questions?
Oh, excellent.
Okay, one. Anybody else? Two.
Okay, we can add comments. Sorry. You can add comments.
Comments.
So I don't stop you from saying anything. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I think we can now be faster.
Good morning. My name is Men Tanko. I'm a town planner and a project manager professionally. So my question comes around, how do we check? Because from all we've been saying is like we have the solutions to these problems, but it still doesn't work out when we implement them. And I see more problem coming from the government side. So how do we check the government? How do we stop them from going beyond what is supposed to be for their own personal gain, and make sure that what is supposed to be is being implemented in a sense? So in the case of government giving out projects, the MDAs do their work, and then 3-4 years, there's nothing. And you don't check the government that give out that project. We don't check them, it just goes, and another government comes and gives that same project and you get the same result, and that's what happens. So how do we check the government itself and not the MDAs in this sense?
Another government or another administration? Because we've had one government since I was born. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Shofarasi Nathaniel. I run a small scale business in Abuja here into transport logistics. We also do construction solutions as well. And we provide advisories in terms of consultancy for diasporans who are not in Abuja. So we support them in facilitating engagement with government. My own question is, okay, I'm glad that one of the panelists talked about the issue of facilitation. I think to a large extent, for me, it resonates with me because most of the time as a private individual, when we look at partnership between government and private investors, there's always a perception between both parties, okay? The private investor look at, okay, what is government driving and who has an interest in it? While the government also look at the private sector and somebody within the government has an interest in what is in it, right? I think that we could do a lot better if there were partnership between federal government, investors, and the sub-nationals, which I think there is some gaps at the moment. But I'm glad with what has happened recently. Maybe a reform can be tailored towards using development commissions, because right now every region is now driving. Infrastructure is development. And when development comes, everybody wants to take a share. Now regions are now asking, from what we saw from what was published from the presidency as to projects by region. So how can we partner with development commissions to ensure that there's an even project development across board that makes an impact, and people would demand that this project is for our region, since it's not working with the states, the sub-nationals. I believe the development commissions can then come in there and see how we get these bankable projects successful. This is my question and contribution.
Sorry, we have a couple more, please.
Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure and honor to be here. My name is Austin Ele. I'm a transaction advisor. So I have one simple question, and this is from experience. So I want to know how the project preparation fund, we have like a guaranteeing component as from experience, most dollar-denominated financing require like a sovereign guarantee. So, and another question that I have to add to that is that if a project fails as regards to, for example, this Lekito situation now, it doesn't charge revenue now, and the investors has invested in that project. What would the, I don't know whether it's ICRC or maybe the government, what would the government do to sort of compensate the investors or for investing in those massive projects? So I think that's just the two questions I have.
Okay, so more hands are coming.
Sorry, sorry.
Sorry, for those that have asked already, I don't know, I think there are general questions to all the panelists. I assume that, is it? Specifically, I knew that one was to him specifically. But your question, I'm sure. No, she's not government now. So for the question about Lekki, I'm sure you have an answer for him? You can speak on that as well. Perfect. Okay.
Good morning. I am Lekon Shudei, Royce Consulting firm. I'm a private consultant contractor also. So my question is directed to the government, ICRC. So he stated that there are guidelines, model concessions, like you said. So will these standard frameworks will the guidelines provide allocations for what risks governments will take and what risks private investors will take? Will the guidelines provide standardized risk allocation frameworks for both parties, the private investors and what governments will take? Thank you.
Let's take these ones. Let's take these ones. Yeah, let's take these ones. We'll come back, please.
Thank you so much. Let me start with the last one, which is the issue of risk allocation and the model contract. So the model contract is just a model. What it means is, we're giving you a framework to work within. For issue of risks, every project, will have different risk allocation, risk parameters. But what we are telling you is, for each project, there has to be this level of risk details in it. So it's based on what the project is for you to do your allocation, your identification, and your mitigation action and everything. So it's just, because it's a model, it's just a framework for you to work within, just like as a guide. So that when people are working, we have a standard framework just as a guide. I hope that works. Then the issue of Lekki. So the good thing with Lekki is, Lekki used to be a concession before the Lagos State government bought it over. So as at the time we had the NSAS, it was a Lagos State government run PPP. So even though it's not working, the person who's losing is the Lagos State government. The private person has left since. Yeah, they were willing to cash out. Government paid them off. So it's a government run toll gate. So there's no risk in it. And that's where I spoke about the issue of compensation payments and clauses for termination. When you get to that point, they always, you can't lose. It's extremely critical. And the issue of development commissions, I think, it's an important one. We are working, we're supposed to have an interaction with the state development commissions and see how we can drive what's happening, because we had a meeting with the person in the Southeast, and I think he has done so well, and he has some very exciting visions for the Southeast Development Commission, which we think can be a template for others to adopt. So part of our strategic engagement is to sit down with development commissions and see how we can use them to come together and have like regional infrastructure, yeah, instead of the subnational ones that are so scattered. So it's a very great idea. It's something we've thought of. Yeah, and it's something that I think will benefit the country more. Yeah. Then the issue of overlapping approvals when administration changes. For me, there are things you can legislate, and one of it is human behavior. But the truth is, as I said, since we came in, we are very conscious of a lot of things. I was supposed to be in a meeting by 11 in the Ministry of Health, and what's the meeting about? We have a project that's come in, we're okay in it, and they have brought 3 more projects on the same thing. There's no way we'll give approvals. Instead, we'll go back to you and tell you, do your homework from your own side, advertise it, whatever you need to do. When you are coming to us, let's be clear. So certain things, are difficult to happen in where we are now. Possibly in the past they were happening, but once you have a regulator, it becomes a lot more difficult. We've gone against ministers many times. Yeah, because we don't report to ministers, we answer to the president. So things like this happen. I'm not saying they don't happen. Maybe in traditional procurement and contracts, you can keep doing it. But for us, we're a lot more careful. Whatever comes in, we try to make sure, they are not duplicates. Even if they are coming from different MDAs that are not related, we'll still tell you, go back and make sure this does not, there are no clashes, there are no overlaps. So we're careful. But the point, these are realities. Yeah, they come in and we just try to put them in to put checks on them. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
And so just go back to get more questions.
Good morning. My name is Ayo, and I'm a political economist. Wonderful session, really enjoyable and insightful as well. And I just want to speak or to get your opinion on the political economy aspect, because you know, investors, government, project managers, all the interests. I've been able to get that. But how about the people? I mean, because at the end of the day, bankability of PPPs through the project preparation facility, you know, strategy, it's all means to an end. So I would like to have your comments on, you know, the people's perspective. You know, just what are you doing? Everything you've been doing lately, how does it really, you know, provide social and economic value for the people? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Tolu Flyer, Transactions Advisory at Merti. I think my question is really around the risk mitigation measures that I think Evan spoke to earlier. So you mentioned something about incorporating these risk mitigations within contracts, right? I'm very curious to know how that would end up for an investor, for example. Say, you know, they're looking to exit, just as I think Mahmoud mentioned. Maybe ICRC can then answer what this will look like for private investors, you know, looking to exit. Maybe they've invested, you know, some level of capital and they think, okay, this is not looking like what we think the end will look like, and they're looking to exit. So what would that arbitration process or resolution process look like? As have there been, you know, success stories, you know, in that regard? And yeah, what's basically would that look like? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nana Ode. First of all, you called me out when I was shaking my head. I was agreeing with you, really, so I wasn't disagreeing with you.
It was going side by side.
No, I mean, I was kind of agreeing because it's an issue that you will confront at all times. So when you raise it, I said, this thing again. So that's what I was saying, not to disagree with you. And I know ICRC has been on the firing line, but let me give you a breather and say, we just commend you for the paradigm shift that we have seen in your leadership. It takes a lot, and I can tell you this for free, it takes a lot for a government agency to understand that this is not working and shift from it and say, let us focus on what can work. And in doing so, you are giving away power and authority and influence. So well done, ICRC. Before I ask my question on the regional development commissions, I don't know if you've studied the law setting up these commissions. And while having discussions with them, there's a dilemma that you will have to confront. You know, the regional development commissions are federally established agencies. That's what they are, you know. And in terms of projects, they have zero assets. They have zero projects as we speak. So they are supposed to manage or deal with federal government-owned projects because they're a federal institution. And so when we talk about regional integration, how to work with subnationals, there's a political economic conundrum that will come with that. And I say so having done a lot of work in government and with government, both at national and subnational. So we need to crack that to make them successful. We really need to crack the ownership question. They're a federal institution working at the subnational. If you follow the process of drafting their law and the pushback from states, you will know that when the time comes for those discussions, you have a lot of issues to resolve. So, but my question then is, and I hope it's not, it's within the remit of this panel discussion. It has to do with alignment when it comes to this project preparation facility. And I raised this during the PPP summit that ICRC hosted.
we have a lot of MFIs with project preparation facilities too, right? If you go to Afrexim Bank, they have theirs. AFDB, they have theirs. AFC, they have theirs, right? And you said when we asked you where you get your guarantees from, you looked at AFC and you are going to get guarantees from them to access our Nigerian project preparation facility, which begs the question, why not go to theirs? So I wanted to know from other country experiences, how best can we manage this situation in order to attain national priorities? Because the priorities of the MFIs may be different from our priorities when it comes to this, right? And it definitely will, when the rubber meets the road, that misalignment will also create its own conundrum. So I don't know if there are other country examples we can share. When I raised it at the PPP summit, the response was, yeah, well, they all have different selection criteria for identifying their projects, but yet you're still working within the same territory called Nigeria, right? So how can we create that alignment between the facilities established by the MFIs and this one that we are now debating on how to create the right structure that will allow it to work in such a way that that misalignment doesn't happen? So it's just, if you can solve it for me, then I will sleep easy tonight. Thank you very much.
You help with the last question, but I think first is that for the regional coordination commissions, they are not, I think the name is development, but I don't think they don't have the power to develop yet, but they are now coordinating states. No, I know. What I'm saying is where they are now is coordination. The states within their regions on. No.
The original law that was passed gave some powers within the commissions to governors to allow this coordination. They had an advisory framework that comprised the governors, and the law was signed by the president 3 or 4 weeks after. When the reality set in, the government sent an amendment. There's an amendment to the act that people don't know about, which has been signed. And that clearly took away
coordination,
everything from the states. That original law also mandated their funding from the allocation to states. The amendment took it out. So they are a full federal agency for regional development. Go and read the law.
The amendment.
Yeah, read the amendment. It's inside.
Yeah, because that's why I was going to the coordination. Now I know there's an amendment. Okay, interesting. So I'm not sure we can resolve regional development. We can't help you here. Okay, good information for us, but I'm not sure we can resolve that here. But let's go to Sarah on international perspectives on PPF in terms of multilateral financing institutions that have interest, but also how do we make sure that we prioritize our own interests as Nigeria and make sure our PPF will focus on our interests? I think that's your question. Yeah.
Okay. I think to better understand that is just to understand what kind of pipelines are the MFIs here looking at. Is it private, different type of infrastructure, or is it what's already in like your national plan for in the national plan? Because in our case, I would say there are those that are looking into funding private deals, and then so not really in competition with what's been put forward for the PFF within government. So I think that's been the difference in terms of, you will find there what we call the privately sourced projects that already may be dealing with some of the private institutions. And so they will get their financing from them. And when you come to these unsolicited, I call them PIPs or unsolicited proposals, usually like they will not be able to tap into some of the resources that we have, and especially some of the windows that I spoke to, like the VGF window, and the contingent liability window. So they don't have a chance to tap into that. They're completely excluded from that. So I would see those being the ones that probably are going to the MFIs in this case. But I would need to understand exactly from this, and maybe I would be able to better understand from the institutions what are some of the pipeline deals that they're looking at, because then what the what the PFF is looking at in Kenya in particular, it's just looking at projects that have been approved under the steering committee. So it's a whole pipeline of projects. It's gazetted and it's already been gazetted and it's in the database. So that's where now they're able to tap into projects. So they're not ad hocly picking projects from anywhere. So I think there's need for that very clear alignment that your projects are approved through regulations and through law by that project steering committee, and those are gazetted and those are the projects. So then there's complete disclosure around what you're doing on your projects.
Thank you very much. So I think ICRC is actually in that process because the engagement with, I'll let you. The engagement with Ministry of Planning, Ministry of Budget and Planning is to achieve a process that have a pipeline
that will serve the country. That will serve the country. Yeah, that's what we are looking at. Yeah, yeah, and the PPF will be focused. I mean, truly focused on the projects that have been gazetted. Yeah.
Okay. Question? Yes.
Hi. Please tell me your name. Tolu. Okay. Tolu. Okay. So you asked me a question that I heard maybe tied a few things together. So I want to separate them first before I answer. So the first thing you asked, the first component of your question was around embedding risks in contracts and embedding risks in contracts. Then you sort of linked it to exits for investors. Okay, so the typical infrastructure heavy projects most of them will be project financed. So in your project finance, it's the underlying, your project finance is the project cash flow that is the primary source of, return, not collateral on an existing balance sheet or something. So what you want to do is you want to ensure that the relationships between the parties in the projects that will ensure that that cash flow is generated is clear. So that is where the embedding of risks comes into the contracts. I'm coming to the second part of your question. I'm seeing your face and I don't know if, but I'm addressing what I heard, which is why I said, okay. Oh, what? No. Eh? Right. You shared same view. Okay, so this is just a question. Okay. Right. Right. Okay. ICRC then. Okay, I finished. Okay, so what I was trying but she seems to understand the question, but maybe let me wrap the comment up. So it was context around the contract. So if there's an off-taker, all these parties are contracts for everybody's role, and the risks unique to the role they play in the project is clear and embedded in the contract. Now, you mentioned something around exits for investor. The only investor, I mean, if you are providing debt, your exit is clear. Your term ends at a particular point, and then you pay down the principal and interest. If it's amortized, if it's a bullet payment, all of that is worked out when you are advancing the terms. And that is worked out. Your exit is clear. Now, exit for an investor. So maybe that's not the investor, maybe the operator of the asset or the concessionaire that wins it if something breaks. Then the terms that go into the contract with this party are termination clauses that he had identified, the arbitration process that I had mentioned that said we need some structure and some transparency around and some backing behind it, because if I do need to enter a settlement process with you. And I mean, at the point, it's at the beginning of a relationship is always sweet. It's in the middle of the journey, when Casala bursts and then everybody's running helter, But how do a Nigerian company, or it's hard for individual companies to take governments to court. And this is not, Nigeria is not unique in these issues. That's why there are international courts of arbitration or so on. It's just a recognition that if we have this scale of deficits and we are saying that our government cannot finance it by itself, then there has to be some good faith in how we approach the investor that we're asking to open our pockets to. And I'm speaking of both the government hat and the investor hat as well. So I'll let Yusuf from ICRC speak about what the government might be doing with further deepening this settlement process if these issues arise. Thank you.
Tolu, thank you so much. Yeah. So I think the issue of dispute resolution, I mean, is a very strong thing, I mean, in any contract. And not just as ICS, even from the perspective of Federal Ministry of Justice, the country is coming up with a standard clause for dispute resolution. And it's just, I mean, and I think it's a multi-layered approach. It is mediation, arbitration before you go to court. I hope I'm correct. I mean, so those are the levels. So it's not a straightforward thing. It's straightforward rather. I mean, it's clearly defined in every contract. Yeah, so if there's a problem, I mean, there are levels of, there are mechanisms that you must, the court is the last option for us. We try to find ways to address these issues because it's a partnership. First of all, it's a partnership. So as Madam said, the thing is about good faith. Everybody's coming in with that good faith. I mean, let's do it right and let's make it work. Yeah, so there are processes for addressing disputes clearly spelled out in every contract. It's something that we put so much effort in when we're negotiating contracts. I think it's a very important clause. Then the issue of you wanting to opt out of the contract in the middle of it, those are addressed too. If there's no termination, if you want to opt out on your own, I mean, there has to be a provision for it. But the only point is, I mean, you are not going to claim what you will claim if it's a termination. But if you are opting out on your own will, I mean, you want to go at the middle of a contract, I mean, government is going to bear some losses. Government is going to take some part of the risk. So yeah, but for everything, I mean, those are where termination comes in and everything compensation. Yeah. So the contract addresses all those issues. Yeah. Yeah. I think we had the same thing with ULI Disco, one of the discos where the operators, I mean, at the point, I mean, opted out. Yeah, and government had to pay them before mainstream went in and took over. Yeah. So things like this happen. I mean, they are not new, but at every point, I mean, because there are systems in place to address them. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an online question, is it? Question from online, right? Please, you can read it out if it's.
So we have a question online, and the question is for private individuals who are interested and actively trying to prepare bankable projects for investors. At the stage where the project is being prepared, how can one access capital or development capital that allows such individuals to prepare the project to a bankable stage for financial close? That was the question.
I think the entire event is about answering that question. We are trying to answer that question because the government is trying to provide a resource for that. And so we're looking at how best do we unlock that using the government budgetary process, but also the framework to manage that. So I think after the event, we will be able to answer the question because most of the actors here are interested in the same thing. Okay? Okay, so are we done with questions? 4. No comments, please. Questions. You have questions?
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
panelists. My name is Nasser Usman Abubakar. I would like to recommend the NSG for its continuity in this policy framework since from the 90s to the 20s. And my question is, the policy framework, does it have a duration in terms of implementation after being analyzed by this committee?
Thank you. Does policy framework have expiry date, like duration for implementation? It's a fair question. So it's a very, very good question because sometimes you may need to revise your policy, update the policy, and reissue the policy. Yeah. Okay. Another one.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Mike Mafido. I'm a PPP transaction specialist with UK NIAF. My first question would be to...
First,
I just have 2 questions. Just 2 questions, please.
Okay.
My first question would be to Sarah. From your experience, from the Kenyan experience, there is the... So I see the PPF as addressing 2 key issues. One is around addressing systemic risk, and the second is on project-specific risk in terms of ensuring that they are well prepared. How do you balance that? For instance, there is the point of, I hear you talk about building capacity within government from the PPF, right? And there was another point around the fact that getting investment, investment grade data is critical, and that's the point she was making around having NBS as a critical stakeholder. These are important because from the position I sit, when we prepare projects, one of the key challenges we always face is data. So how do we balance addressing systemic risk with the PPF and then project-specific preparation activities? What's the experience for Kenya? And then to Mr. Peter, AFC. I could remember a few years ago, the AFC and the SMDF set up a project development facility to come up with a pipeline for the mining sector. Where are we with that? Do we have a pipeline right now? Thank you so much.
Final two comments, questions, sorry.
Thank you so much for this section. I would just want to ask question on the area of, my name is Samuel, and I'm into human capacity development and also revenue growth. My own question is going to be tied towards the area of human capacity development. I remember when he was speaking earlier, he said when the project are ongoing with some of the MDAs, we find out 2-3 years after, those that initiated the project are transferred to other departments, and of course, there's no continuity. So my question is, what are you doing, or the program that we've set up really doing in terms of sustainability of the human capacity and ensuring that at least they get retained, and also there's transfer of knowledge as well too, such that it does not change the intention of the original project.
Okay.
Sorry, final.
The last one.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anne. I'm a sustainability and climate risk professional with Federal Mortgage Bank. My question is around the idea, maybe with ICRC, the idea of systems thinking and its approach to infrastructure, development. Bearing in mind that we need to have like an integrated infrastructure planning framework where we need to consider the interdependencies between the various infrastructure we have, or systems we have, such as, transportation, energy and water and all that. And in terms of sustainability, we are looking at green infrastructure. So what frameworks are being developed? And we also need to be looking at, the circular economy, where we try to minimize waste and encourage and promote reuse, recycling, and waste reduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So let's just round this up with those that are going to respond to the questions. I think ICRC, you have a loyal load of questions your way. So just respond to the question, but also take about 2 minutes to give a closing statement on this. ICRC, I'll start with you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. The issue of losing capacity in the MDs after you've taken them through a whole lot of training and everything. So it's a major issue for us. Part of what we are trying to do is to find a way of doing a cadre for PPPs, just the way you have in other structures in the ministry, planning, finance, and accounts. So if we can do a procurement cadre, wherever as a PP person will go under the procurement cadre. So whatever happens, even when you're posted that, you're still posted that within the PP ecosystem. So that will help. But at the moment, I mean, it's a big issue for us. Yeah, so that's what we're trying to do. We're working with the Office of Establishment, the Office of the Head of Service. I hope that answers the question. Then the other one is the issue of policy. How long does a policy last? I mean, there's no timeline for a policy. As regulators, I mean, our job is to issue guidelines as much as we can. Once something is not working, the point is to address it. And how do we address this? By issuing guidelines, by issuing circulars, by issuing processes. So a guideline is as good as it serves the purpose for which it was issued. If it works, it can stay for as long as is necessary. But if it's not working, you can take it down in 3 to 6 months. The point is to make the system work. It's about achieving results. So guideline doesn't have, I mean, the duration of a guideline is for as long as it's useful, for as long as it's serving the purpose for which it was enacted. Then which one? The issue of renewables, issue of integrated and looking at the integrated economy. I think that's actually a very big one. I mean, what's the word you're using again? Is it renewable infrastructure? There's a word you used, climate-friendly infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Building transportation has effects on energy has effects on water, and all those, like a holistic and approach to that development, which is very important and very important to keep in mind, like infrastructure, like step like.
I think that's actually important for us. Possibly, I mean, it's not something we are working too much towards, but I think it's a place that we need to move into. I mean, issue of sustainable infrastructure, renewable infrastructure. I mean, that's where the world is going, and we can't be left behind. Yeah, but the issue of the synergies, the issue of integration is not strong. You know, the point is about this. Everybody wants to be territorial, so it does. But the truth is, as a country, we're losing so much. The other time, I was somewhere in Lagos, and there was a new bridge that was built, but the bridge was so low that ships cannot pass under. But somebody has done his job. He has done a bridge. Without being mindful that the other person, I mean, you stop the other person from doing his work. So as a country, I think this issue of planning, issue of coming together, and that's where I think, I mean, we need to work with the National Planning Commission and see how we can integrate a lot of these projects. Somebody spoke about every day. Madam spoke about the number of these seaports that are coming. Don't worry. So the interesting thing, I mean, is something we keep talking about. I mean, we've been talking with the NPA too, because anytime it comes, I mean, it's like, another one. We felt, I mean, states can come together. Maybe the Southeast can come together and just have one big DC plan. All of you are stakeholders instead of everybody going to look for financing that doesn't exist. Or maybe go to the South or Ebonyi. I mean, sorry, Rivers is doing Bayelsa is everybody's, who has the traffic? Because the ports don't drive traffic. It's the traffic that drives port development. Yeah, so these are realities. But I mean, the one that has the post master plan is the one that sends this into us. But these are conversations that I think as a country that we must have. We must have. If we didn't have it in the past, as we move on, for us to make progress, for us to make sure these things work. There's no way we can do 10 deep sea ports in Nigeria. It's not possible. Who will finance it? So these are conversations that it might be painful. People might not like it, but we must sit down as a people, as a government, I mean, and just agree, because the monies are not even there to develop the deep sea ports. Yeah, but sincerely from our own side, I mean, these are things, I mean, these are discussions, I mean, we're having, and since the new DG came in, I mean, we've been strategic in our engagements. Whoever has a role to play within the ecosystem, we try to go to them and sit down and have conversations. Yeah, because we just realized, she said, I mean, you cannot sit down on your own side and think you can take decisions for people. So we must go to them and let's see, how do we make these things work? We've gone around, we're speaking to a lot of people, and the feedback sincerely have been tremendous. Everywhere we go, people are happy to have conversations, which I think is a way to go. Yeah, as from the ICRC, maybe in closing, we've tried to streamline our processes. We've tried to make projects move faster. We've tried to issue guidelines to create a lot of clarity that is not every time you come to our reception and say, I want to see this person, how do I do this? You should be on your own trying to take a lot of decisions and only come to us on those very major decisions. Secondly, we've tried to decentralize the approval processes. The person doing a deep sea port, what $1 billion, and the person doing a hostel in Zaria, what $1 billion, shouldn't go through the same process. And that has actually slowed us down. I mean, the president has been magnanimous to give approval. I mean, when we spoke to him, within 24 hours, he gave us that approval. That'll tell you how committed, how serious he is to making these things work. So from our own side, I mean, we've been in this space for 15 years doing the same thing. And it's easy for us to sit down and know where the problems are, where our challenges are, and see how we can move forward. As the DG said, I'm sure you've seen it. I mean, whatever comes in, our limit for approval is 7 days. If there's a problem, we'll write back to you and tell you this is not to the standard we want to go back and do it. But if it's okay, within 7 days, we give you an approval. And part of the guidelines we have is, we've issued about 13 guidelines. So even when you appoint an OBC as a private person, we've given you a guideline of what the should contain, so that you are not just working blindly, coming to us and we're saying back no. So on the website now, there's a guideline for FBC, for OBC, for your financial model, for your solicitor process, for the unsolicited process. The model contract is now we're finalizing. So we've issued about 13 guidelines. at one go. And this will be a continuous process, because the point, as I said, is how do we make this space better? How do we make it more interesting for investors and more encouraging for people to come into this space? So from our side, I think we're open for business. I mean, we're happy to take advice. We're happy to have suggestions. Anything you think can improve the system, please talk to us. It's a new SRC. I mean, the contract is for all of us are victim if it doesn't work. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think closing remarks. First of all, I want to thank ICRC, NESG, and UKNIF for organizing this. I think these conversations, I don't know if all the issues will be resolved in the lifetimes of all of us that are present, but it is necessary that we move the needle forward. And I'm very happy that we are in a group of people with the mindset and the desire to actually make the right change. Infrastructure developments, conversations, the 70s and the 80s are different from what we're having now. So while it seems as if we are inching forward bit by bit, so let's not forget that things are moving, albeit slowly. So it's just, what is the next iteration of this, and how do we do better than we've been doing before? This really seems to be the underlying questions we are asking. So I think the fact that these forums are happening is an important thing and is necessary for the progress that we're all trying to participate in. In closing, it is the question that this gentleman on the behind asked, wearing the sports jacket, asked about human capacity development. I make a joke with my MD that I am a borrowed resource. My attachment to the MD of RA's office was financed under a technical assistance program, part of the technical assistance grants that we received from the World Bank, well, under the loan facility taken under theirs. So if that, what we're saying is, and one of the reasons why he insisted that I need someone from the investment and investor environments is because I'm about to do things that requires attractions of private capital. I need people that understand how they think, but also work with me to get there. Now, the question is, how do we embed resources like me and everybody in this room in the places where these conversations are happening? I think it's first the intentionality of the leader of the MDA itself, and I was lucky with the particular person that I'm with. The second is the government and the Kenya example, being intentional about providing facilities to staff these teams, creating these offices. One of the things I'm noticing, a trend with state governments that I'm liking, is that they are all having investment promotion agencies. So even if my senior advisory role may disappear, but if there is a version or there's an office that was created, acknowledged by the agency, state, federal, whatever agency, then there is a necessity to staff it, and that staff is mentioned or listed under the head of service. So even if somebody moves on to somewhere else, the resourcing of that office is necessary. So it is creating the space for them to be, and then the capacity building that staff starts. So tied to the recommendation that Sarah made from the experiences from Kenya was the PPF with Kenya also has a capacity building component to it for the beneficiary agency. So these are things that we should tie together as close as possible with some intentionality, at least for the first few agencies that run. And then once this template is rolled out, we find a way to scale it up. That's where I'll close. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. MD, thank you. Thank you so much for this. For us in finance, we say private capital is a coward. She only goes where she feels safe. Sorry? Well, we tend to. Private capital is beautiful. She's a she. She's a she. With us at Vibranium, we try to align private capital and power to unlock development. Our next steps will be to see how we can participate in turning government's ambitions into bankable PPP structures and then supporting the process. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe to quickly answer the gentleman's question on SMDF's partnership with AFC. So indeed, we have an active partnership with them. There's a pipeline of early stage mining projects that we are working with them on. There are 2 active projects that we are actually progressing towards signing heads of terms and all that. So there's a pipeline, and that partnership is still active. And maybe my comment on our closing remarks essentially would be around AFC's appetite for early stage project development. We are happy to, and then essentially to maybe answer that online question, we are happy to speak to developer sponsors where we would work together to co-develop projects with yourselves and then bring in that development capital to see projects to financial close. Our development capital typically would be as equity or maybe a development multiple at financial close where we would exit and that development capital, and then our principal investment teams will come in to bring in the long-term financing. So happy to expand my pipeline of projects with different catch-ups and discussions after this session. Thank you.
Thank you. And to answer Mike's question, I think I looked at it back like it's been a long journey in Kenya. And I'm trying to remember when I think with PPIF, I first walked into the investment secretary's office, must have been back in 2007. To get to where we are, it's taken a long time. And I think back then what we had in terms of a pipeline was what you call a wish list. And everybody thought PPPs is the way to go. It's a new bank, it's a big word. And so we had these one pagers and everybody thought this is something that ought to be funded. And this came even from strong ministries that says, no, this has got to be on the list. So I think looking at how to balance project preparation and capacity is built from, I think, that history where clearly there was no capability to be able to move these projects forward. And so luckily there was the seed capital that had been given by the bank, and that kind of went into the facility to be able then to finance the capacity building side. And I think that has borne fruits because right now we have about 25 projects that this directorate has been able to pass. A bigger number, largely because some of them maybe are like the around the road annuity program, which then kind of counts many lots into that. But really you can see the effect of that buildup of capacity and the need to do that. But at the same time, you can't build, in as much as you want to build capacity for the unit, the MDAs must also have capacity because they're the ones who are running with these projects. So they're the project sponsors, they're the ones who will run with the project for the 20-25 years that it's in operation. So I think that bit really needs a balance, because then it comes back to what I was speaking to when we talk about bankability, when we talk about sustainability, it's really the larger and enabling environment, and it's looking at very many different things. So I think that's how we've been able to achieve that balance. I hope that answers your question. But I think when I think of project preparation facilities, I always look at the impact goal. So you just don't want to have a pipeline of projects moving forward, but you don't just want to have volume, but you also want to have quality. So it's looking at volume and quality, and I think those speak to capacity. And obviously having now these institutional embedment and institutional capability, I think is also key in moving that forward. Thank you.
So quality of projects, risk, and how is allocated, the strength,